need to do that one.
Okay, we're all here, mate.
Okay, guys. So, hey, we're going to head into the councillors. Hey, councillors, before we head into the questions and tests of support, I just want to give some context. Staff? Context. It's virtually true. Well, yeah. Hey, so from a 10-year plan perspective, there's been some statements made. It's probably the most appropriate time to say in terms of the level of investment that the base budget represents. So, in terms of whether or not this base budget actually has a balance of community investment. So the 2015 to 25 10-year plan had $147.5 million worth of community investment, and that's the inflated figure. So $147 million worth of community investment inflated. Now, this 10-year plan, based on the Mayor's proposal, is an uninflated amount. We haven't inflated it yet. An uninflated amount of $267 million. So there's $120 million additional community-related expenditure, and that reflects the renewals, as well as the business improvement, as well as the other proposals that have yet to be included. But that's a significant lift. So to say that this budget doesn't honour the community isn't quite balanced. There is a significant uplift in community in this, and that's part of looking after what we've got through the renewals, as well ensuring there's a degree of balance in there as well. And I'm not saying that in any way to change people's discussions going forward. It's more a fact that people are aware. It's probably the largest investment we've made in the arts, if you include the theatre and so forth as well. So just from a context point of view, it's probably important to understand. $267.6 million uninflated. So it should be much more. That reflects the renewals, and you've signed off on it. Councillor Mallett, you've pushed that because you've adopted the renewals budget, and there's a significant portion of that is the renewals, and the other part of the funded programs which have yet to be adopted, but that's what's reflected in this base budget.
Can you just split that up very quickly between renewals, repairs, and new?
Yeah, I will, and have to do that. I'll come back to you on that, Councillor Pascoe, because the work paper I was given was that. And so
I think that's important.
Absolutely, and all the information is there, so I will provide that. We'll provide that.
Excel spreadsheet.
Yep. Yep. So if you look on page 152, that's this year's information. It doesn't include previous information. It does include the breakdown of the amount. So 123 million in renewals. 152, and that's this year's information for this 10-year plan. It doesn't reflect the previous.
Please ask my question. Oh, am I next on the board for question?
Yep. And those are uninflated amounts.
Thank you. So my question then, Richard, is yes, I accept that. Isn't it true, though, that the documents we've been getting in the workshops, updates, whatever you call those, have been indicating that to deal with the debt issue that the previous council had, that renewals were pushed back, maintenance and renewals were not done quite as well as they might have been, and also that some new projects were deferred to get debt under control, and you were saying that that was a good job, which we agree is a good job in terms of that was the focus, to get debt. But so what we're getting here, although it's an amount more, is really bringing a lot of that stuff back on stream, because I mean, you used the theatre as an example. Well, the theatre's defunct because of lack of renewals and maintenance, so we're now in the position of having to do that. So yeah, I take your point that there is a little bit more money in, but wouldn't you say there needed to be based on where we were before?
I wasn't actually making a statement reflecting whether I thought it was a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying that this budget includes $267 million of uninflated community-related expenditure. So to say that it doesn't include community-related expenditure is not correct, or a significant increase.
Don't know if anyone
There's
said
a-
that.
But-
It feels like you're politically debating a little bit. With respect, all of my commentary, and I'm assuming this is mostly, I know you're not aiming at me, but it's pretty obvious it is me. I have always stated this is around new investment, and new investment is $80 million, which is 10% of the $800 million. That is why I supported the renewals budget yesterday.
I'm not even...
I'm talking in a different context
and
that you are, and I've never been unclear about that.
I'm not even talking in a context. I'm just saying that when we get into this, there's the figures are the figures, and it's something we haven't really discussed and will come through in this discussion, but yeah.
It's just sorry, with respect, it's a little unfair to be an elected member around the table with a view that is correct, and to be, I can't compete with you and the organisation, and just, it has felt a little bit like this journey that each statement or step that I take, this is the reaction that I'm getting. So I know it's not personal, but I'm stating that for the record, that I do find that context setting a little bit disingenuous, because I haven't been disingenuous with the comments that I've been making, and I've been very clear. And as I said, that's why I supported the renewals budget. Like Councillor Southgate said, it is catch-up. But in terms of the context that I'm coming from, there is only $80 million, which will move around now for community, new investment in this budget.
Can I just make it absolutely clear, and I'll give you the background why I said the statement, is I'm very fiscally conservative, and the only thing I was trying to achieve here was trying to manage pushing the costs up any higher. So that's all I was saying, to make sure that we provide that balance, that it is significant investment. So I wasn't trying to be political, I was just trying to make sure people understood that when they're debating the numbers. Wasn't focused on anyone in particular.
That's great, let's get going. Yeah.
I'm with you.
I guess there has been a huge amount of pushback on this budget and on the amenity community plan that has been put out, and you'd be blind if you didn't see that. And I didn't ask Richard to say what he just said in any shape or form, but there has been a huge amount of publicity which actually hasn't all been correct. And I have put up $80 million for community and amenity, and to be, you know, it's just a fact that there is an $80 million that's been put up, so, which is far more than what has been put up ever in the past.
Okay, I think it's to me now. So just before we're at sort of number 2 in this sort of piece here. So just agreeing that full list of proposals. So this, for those that can't see it, so these are this is sort of funded proposals. These are where elected members have signalled variations to what are currently funded proposals in the paper. We've got a list of unfunded proposals which are also contained in the paper, which elected members have signalled that they want to be on the list. And then we've got a list of other items down here. So before we actually get into the working through the list, I just wanted to make sure that we understood what each of these proposals was. So we're not going to go through these unfunded proposals. Those are contained in the report, and everyone can read those. I do just want to give elected members the chance to very quickly, in a sort of a couple of sentences, just explain what these variations to the existing proposals are, just so that we understand before we start going through each one what those changes to those later proposals might look like.
Sure, what's an existing proposal? Is it existing proposals what's in our 2015-2025 plan,
No,
or what's in this book?
What's in that booklet?
So when you say an existing proposal, you mean Mayor Andrews' recommendations? Okay.
Correct.
Are we not going to follow your sheet?
We are. Yes.
The first one is imaging local government, not living wage.
Correct. So these are simply where elected members have signalled some changes to what has been proposed in there. So when we actually start going through the proposals, we'll start from number 1
Okay.
and go through to 18, and then we'll work through these unfunded
Cool.
ones. So the living wage slash council minimum wage, I think that was Gary. I think you asked for that to go on the board. So just in sort of, oh sorry, I apologise. It was Dave.
I just think when there's more than one person, because there's several that have asked for them to go up, you should ask each person to put their change that they want, and then we do it.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, Dave. I didn't realise you'd put that up there. So it's just a kind of quick explanation of what your proposed variation is, and then as we sort of start going through them, if we can make sure that the governance team have those in writing, so that when we get to discussing that particular item, we've got that available. So do you want to just
Well,
explain?
Gary's first.
Okay, two issues. I disagree with the issue, with the what's been in the what's been put in the mayor's budget. Two reasons. We're not debating here.
No, we don't need the reasons.
Yeah,
It's just an explanation so people understand.
Okay,
what
and
you're
I just two reasons. A, I disagree with it, and secondly, I don't think we've got enough information because, as I said yesterday, I don't think you can do this without having some impact on relativities across the whole organisation. So I don't think we've got the full picture of the actual cost.
Okay.
And I know that Richard pushed back on that and said it's going to be really hard, but I think you said you're not going to address the don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seemed to me that you were just going to live with the funny relativities that this created, and you said it was going to be tough and that sort of stuff. And my point is, I think that's untenable, and over time we will have to address the relativities, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. So
Aren't we got two different processes going? If someone wants to be against
Yeah.
something the mayor's
So-
proposed, then they're going to have a debate.
Just to be clear,
I'm trying to vary it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Why don't we get into the proposals and come back when we get
no, hang on. Excuse me, I understand, Gary, what you're saying, but what Dave's put up is a totally different proposal to what I've put up. You haven't put anything up, you just think it doesn't work, so you'll get your chance in debate, okay, when it comes up, but Dave's put up a different proposal that he wants discussed. So, excuse me, moving on.
He's dying.
The mayor may not be around to sign off his budget. You carry on like that.
Okay, look, mine's actually not totally different. It's a fractional variation. My proposal is simply that the rate, rather than being $20 exactly, be $20.20, which is equal to the current year's living wage amount.
okay.
So that's all mine is.
Thank you. Okay. So the rubbish and recycling. There's two alternatives to be discussed. Are they the options that are in the report?
One of them is, mine is basically to bring it in-house rather than have a targeted rate.
Okay. Yep.
Was yours the other one, Dave?
Well, mine's to have pay it all on the general rate, but also to have collection of rubbish and recycling fortnightly and food waste weekly, which is not exactly the same as what's in here. I'm thinking basically the Christchurch option. So, yeah, but all financed through the general rate, or a general rate.
So thank you.
Yeah, we can talk together and...
That sounds good. Okay, so the playground development one, I think that was Rob.
Yes, I've got an amendment. And that amendment is to accept the Mayor's recommendation and to add to it that in the long-term plan we add in 3 new playgrounds, 2 destination playgrounds in years 3 and 5, and 1 pocket park playground in year 1 in Garden Place to coincide with the proposed redevelopment of Garden Place, should that be undertaken by local business. And I'm asking for an allocation of $2.5 million for those 3 playgrounds.
Rob, is that on top of?
No, I'm coming to that. Of which $5 million $500,000 would come as part of the 3.9 million that is currently in the budget, in the proposal for Garden Place redevelopment, and that $2 million would be set aside for the 2 new destination playgrounds. I've spoken with Lance, and the intent is to take that $2 million, if it gets approval, to take that $2 million from the $20 million proposal for Rototuna Town Centre. No change. No change.
I'm aiming to second that, but we're still kicking around the size of the playground and the quantum for Garden Place. And that's whether that happens or not is my support on the Garden Place proposal.
I would be indicating a further amendment should those fail, and that would be the full Destinations Playground Plan.
I think what's starting to emerge is that we probably need to stop for a few minutes later, and the groups who are speaking get together and see if there's common ground, where you can possibly put up one amendment between two different ideas. But I think that we need to stop the meeting for 10 minutes to do that. So listen to what groups align with what you're thinking, so you can get together with those groups.
So we'll go through the list first.
Yep.
And then do this. Okay.
Okay, so the Hamilton Gardens development.
That's mine. That's reducing the Mayor's $18 million for 13 new gardens to $7 million capital and $2.2 million OPEX to start 4 gardens. And the second part is to continue the targeted rate of $10.
And I have one for that as well, so perhaps I'll have a chat with Jeff.
And I've got a slight variation on the revenue. The $10 remains, but as a charge on the same people the Mayor's talking about.
Okay, and then the Central City Park.
It's me reducing the Mayor's $20 million capital expenditure to $12 million on that. And, yeah. What do you do?
Great. Okay, so the underfunded proposals, so they are all in the report, so we're not going to go through any of those. I'll assume that people can read those proposals in the report.
Moving won't be the same as what we got in here.
Oh, okay, so I was assuming that they were. Okay, so are there any of these unfunded proposals where people have that want to just explain where? Yep. Okay.
But I have questions. I think the only one that will require require a funding aspect. The others of mine are probably questions. Can we cover stuff out of O&M? Lake Whaiwhakariki, I want discussion around option 1 or a modification, all right? And the gully restoration, what, Lance, is the current subsidy to private owners to encourage them to restore their gully areas? What is that? We don't do anything. We don't do anything? We had a gully restoration fund?
We cut that in 2012. Gone. We don't do anything.
Okay, well, just lock that into the two. Just I'll deal with those as one.
Okay.
Indoor recreation centre, I've got a specific resolution, which is to put up $6 million, $2 million from council in year 4, $2 million in year 5, and a further $2 million in year 4 to be collected as a regional rate through the Significant Facilities Fund or whatever it's called.
Okay, are there any of these other unfunded proposals where elected members have an option which is not one of the options that's in the report?
I just want a couple of quick questions, right? Now, in terms of the lake, and I suppose it's the time to do it, I've looked at that as an unfunded as I understand it, but obviously there's 2 issues as we move forward for extra car parking at the Lake Innes Common area, proposals of the lake plan, and also a lighting proposal on the from the lake round to the, for joggers and that stuff, and not where the houses are. And I wonder if I just give notice that you could, I suspect that can come out of O&M or through sponsorships. Yeah. But in terms of, all I'm saying is what I want is some statement of a sentence of, because I think with leave, Your Worship, we've had a very successful external funding process, and I think it would be good in the documents to actually bullet point where we, areas where we're going to be looking for that. So I'm flagging that. With regard to Steel Park, presumably, can you just clarify what can be done out of existing O&M in terms of improving of the buildings there? The tidy up of Steel Park. I'm looking. Who am I looking at?
It's in the funded program.
Funded?
Yeah, it's funded. The toilets
last night, Mark.
Okay, all right, that's all right, fine, leave that. Yep, that's it, I'm gone. See, can I say I'm anticipating when we get to the river plan, central city transformation, there'll be a series of questions around what the new river plan might look like and how that may impact, and I'll be certainly focusing on some work to be done linking the CBD walkway through to Hamilton Gardens via Wellington Beach, but I think they are in essence captured a lot in the Mayor's proposals anyway.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I think
On the Central City Park.
I think Paula, you had something.
Yes, thank you. Just to allow council to sort of think about this ahead of, like you say, doing some work on it. I've got three motions, or four connected. One relates to the Central Library and improving its engagement with Garden Place, which won't be a surprise because I've talked about it a few times. Yep, I'm just letting people know what it is. Thank you, and I do have some figures around that. I do have a seconder for that. And also when that a small thing to look at offsetting some of that cost with leasing, renting portions of the frontage where like Physique used to be, small thing around that. I'm wanting to allocate a little bit of money in the years 3 and 6 of the plan to allow Hillcrest Library and Chartwell Library to see some of the improvements that have been planned for some time. So that's there, right? And then the zoo master plan, I'm still in conversation with people, but I have got some support for the idea of the entranceway in terms of the cafe, the two-way cafe and entranceway, and connectivity to Lake Waiwhakareke. I was just talking with Mayor Gallagher before, Councillor Gallagher before, and I'm in alignment around the basic toilets, picnic areas and footpaths. Oh, really? You wear those so often, I'm sure you wouldn't let him wear them for a while. Pardon? Oh, was it? Oh, was he? Yeah, so no, just around the toilets, picnic areas, footpath improvements for Lake Waiwhakareke to engage that. And the final one is that I would like to see some activation of the rear of the museum as per discussions from the River Plan Working Party as part of the River Plan. Thank you.
So I have another view on the CBD library, different to Paula's, that it would be closed down.
Okay.
And also you want to talk about Claudelin's operating model as well.
Yeah, yes, I do. I was waiting.
So we'll
Okay, we're doing it by person or by list?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
My apologies.
that's right.
Okay, is there anything else that people want to signal in these unfunded proposals?
Can I just make a point of process here? I think it's, I'm only new here, etc., but I'm pretty sure we're not going to be finished by 8:30. So could we maybe set our clocks to finish at 8:30 to make it easy for people to plan around the table?
We'll just see how we go, Mark.
I think it's a good idea.
We could be through this in 2 hours.
Are you a gambling man, or? Oh, if you okay.
We'll just see how we go. I mean, if
All
we're
right.
getting close.
I'm not trying to get
If
out
we are
early.
getting close, I do want to continue.
I don't condone gambling, but we have an office sweepstake. I took it to a
So just to be really clear, if we're getting close at 8:30, I just want to wind it up. But if we're miles away, then we'll finish.
Okay.
Okay, right, so we've done the funded and unfunded proposals. So I'm assuming that these other ones in the unfunded proposals, people are essentially putting forward the what's in the options in the report, essentially. Yeah. Great. So gully restoration we talked about. Lake Rotorua we talked about.
All I want to know is that's been covered, I think, in terms of, it's been covered off, yep.
rub it off.
Yes, on the basis that we have the list of where we're seeking some external sponsorship.
The deputy mayor is my favourite elected member.
Yeah.
Okay, the rep. That was you, Councillor Angela, wasn't it?
Yep.
Are you signaling what?
Well, there's nothing in here other than a line that says it's going to 1.4 million, which is double what it is now.
So Councillor Leary's A1 has some questions about it. Okay, the counter
So I get, from the little information that is in here, depending on my questions, it may just be a vote against it. So take it off the board because I'll have
Yeah, you can put
questions.
an amendment up at the time.
No, I'll have to call it because we've moved it, haven't we?
We have, so I'd suggest we leave it. So
All right,
because
leave
if we
it
don't,
on
then
there.
you
I'll
won't get the opportunity
just
to
satisfy my questions, yeah.
Okay, and the Claudelands events and business model, Gary?
Oh, just different options of running for Claudens, up to and including,
Have you got something that you were going to propose?
yep.
Okay. Do you want to signal that now, or will it be a surprise?
Yeah, that we look at outsourcing the whole outfit.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Planting on roundabouts.
Craig's list.
Planting on roundabouts. Is that you, Councillor Day? Oh, sorry.
That we, from now on, we just accept that our roundabouts are not pretty, they're part of a roading network and that they should be concreted over.
Okay. Got it. Okay, and social housing fund?
That's one from the Deputy Mayor and myself, and that is that, I'll read out, the 2 million of the 18.5 million to be repaid in February 2019 by Accessible Properties Limited be allocated to a contestable social housing fund.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so if everyone's happy that we've captured the list of proposals that and things that we're going to talk about, we'll start with the funded proposals, which is the 1 to 18 list.
I've just had a word with the CEO and he may be addressing one of those issues on. So the Claudens thing, I think, may be addressed elsewhere.
So you're happy to take that off the list?
Yeah.
Councillor Mallett's my second favourite elected member. You're my second favourite elected member.
Okay, so we'll start working through the proposals then. So we'll start working through from the funded proposals in the order that they are in the report, so 1 to 18.
So if things come up and you want to stop because there's amendments from more than one group and we want to get together, that's fine. We'll just stop for 5 minutes, get those two lots of people together to get their amendments when that paper comes up, where it may bring alignment between the two groups or may not. We'll
Yeah, so if I can ask elected members that have signalled that they've got things that they want to propose, if you can put those in writing and send them to the governance team, would be very helpful.
And are we going to, I think you said it yesterday at the start, are we going to have questions, motions and then debate and dispose of that proposal?
Yep, so we're now up to sort of part 3, which
Yeah,
is
so
we're going to go through each one, we're going to have questions, we're going to have discussion on those, and then
motion.
we're going to get a test of support for those things. So it won't be a formal motion at that stage, Councillor Angela. It'll be testing support for that. We will, through show of hands, register that. Okay,
because then you're going to go back and do the modelling and say, here's the impact of the rates increase, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, so based on
that's the better way to do it, I think.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get cracking.
So the first one up is...
So the first one up is reimagining local government.
Oh, which page is that?
86.
86.
Sorry, councillors, this piece of paper that Sean handed out earlier has got a summary of the proposals in the order that they're working through with the page numbers, just to assist.
I want to talk to this. In the current 10-year plan proposal, as when Councillor Mallett asked the question about where did the $15.5 million came from, I said it's effectively we've got increases and decreases in revenue, we've got increases in cost, and the deficit created required a $15.5 million gap. Prior to doing this work, we looked at it and basically the gap was larger than $15.5 million, and the Mayor challenged me to include a $5 million stretch target. So within the base budget put forward is $5 million worth of stretch. So that's the first part, and that's not part of reimagining local government. That's in the budget. If you sign this budget off, I've got to find savings of $5 million in year 1 of the budget. So I just want to state that and push that to one side because there's been some confusion in terms of what's going on. So that's one part of it. In the base budget, you sign it off, I've got to go after that. If we don't do that savings, the rates increase needs to be greater than 15.5% to one side. Then, in the chairperson's report, the Mayor put, you would have read that the Mayor's challenged myself, the organisation and elected members to continue to be innovative and look at the way we deliver our services. And he's challenged effectively an additional $5 million savings in year 2 and then a further savings in year 3. To respond to that challenge, I've requested that the Mayor include $1 million of cost in year 1, and that $1 million worth of cost in year 1 will be taking an innovative look at how we deliver our services using a third party. It's roughly going to be about $750,000 to $850,000 for a third party consulting firm and about $150,000 for a project manager, plus some peripheral costs to run a program. And the outcome of that program, which I'll give a little bit more detail in a minute, will be returned to Council with some opportunities for generating savings, effectively to generate $5 million of incremental savings in year 2 and $10 million savings in year 3. Those are enduring savings to reduce our overall cost base. The program will look at how we do things. The challenge the Mayor's given me, which is quite a significant challenge, is to reduce the cost of the service without reducing levels of service. Reduce the cost but not reduce the cost levels of service. So it's completely looking at the way we deliver our services. That's why we call this reimagining local government. And it's taking an approach whereby we potentially may, and that's one of the reasons that I've asked Councillor Mallett to consider his item about the operating model for Claude. It may well be looking at the way we deliver our various services and look, is there a smarter, more effective way of delivering these services with smarter contracting and relationships with the private sector or the quasi-social private sector. There's a number of organisations out there using social bonds, way we package up our renewals program. I've often said this, Chris is getting used to it. We have $500 million worth of renewal expenditure. If we were to package that up in some sort of attractive manner, we could potentially go to the market with a $500 million contract, but we actually do it for $400 million, and we have in there a pain gain share, fixed margins and so forth. I've tested that with a number of contracting companies and they say it's doable and done overseas. It's not hugely doable here. I'd look to work with the university in terms of developing some innovative contracts or stealing innovative contracts from around the world. And when I say innovative contracts, there are more and more contracts out there that require third-party private enterprises to actually consider levels of service and social delivery. And an example I've given, and I've challenged Downer, for example, we've approved it now, the LED lighting program, but prior to that I said if we can't afford the LED lighting program, would it have been more effective for you to go to the community and negotiate with them in certain levels of service to build up equity? For example, prepared footpaths, not a great one to use considering the level of service on that footpath, but let's say we had a good level of service on footpaths, would it have been appropriate for Downer to go to the community and say if we could reduce our level of service and footpaths for 3 years to generate some equity, i.e. save some money so we can invest in LED lighting to get us there, would that have made Downer's life more interesting but better off as part of the alliance model? So the whole premise behind this is to think differently. I've made it clear to Mayor Andrew that the culture of the organisation is critically important to me, so this is not about wholesale restructuring. If we do end up privatising things, I'll be looking at making sure that there's protection for staff in that process as well. So better models, better way of delivering it. I've been challenged numerous times across different organisations whether or not this can be achieved. I'm comfortable that something can be achieved. I'm comfortable once we're in the first year of $1 million investment, and then probably it'll take 2 years to execute. There would be significant savings. So by the procurement side of things, I would have to bring it back to council once you're approving the funding side of things. I'd have to develop a terms of reference, a business case, bring that back to council, then bring back a tender to council, and it'll have to be a robust procurement due diligence process so that council is comfortable with what we're trying to achieve. But that's it. That's it. And I'm happy to take questions.
So I'm seat 13.
You're seat 13.
I was seat 13. So I'll go first. So thanks, Richard. So this is essentially having an external group in to take a look at what we can outsource or what we can privatise.
I'd say what we can do differently, and I'm given a suite of options. It might be that there are other ways we can do things. It can be done in-house. We could probably hire people to do it, but there are numerous firms out there that do this sort of work, and so rather than reinventing the wheel, I'd look to bring someone in, hire a firm to do the work.
So how do you balance that with the fact that in this budget there's initially 41 new staff positions before you've even started this work?
Yep, so every one of those 41 positions have been justified based on our demands and needs, so we've gone through that. This will be looking for innovative ways of doing it. So,
and look, it won't be a surprise to you, I'm really sceptical about things like this. We've had several over the years of council, all with different names. In 2015 we did a support services review, the organisation did it. You did it. How many of those things were implemented? What was the quantum of savings achieved? And then what happens when new staff and new managers, unit managers come on board, they do things their way and we lose those savings?
Yep, so there's $1 million saved through my support services review. $500,000 was given back and put into the 10-year plan as funding for the river plan annual increases, so it was a net upside of $500,000.
So you don't report that on that though, do you? So
That's just part of the budgets now. The budget's been locked and loaded, so when we tied the budgets down, the total budget number was less $1 million.
Yeah, but there's no transparent way that I can follow that money to see if it was effective or not, other than you're telling me it is.
Through the review of the budgets and the Finance Committee, the bottom line's been changed, so it's been endured because the bottom line's reduced.
So just one part of the second question you haven't answered. When new staff come on board and they want to do things differently and change systems back or make systems more, have more staff on board, change the way they do things, efficiencies that you've gained over time can be lost because you want to empower new people to be able to, put their brand and their mark on things. How do you track?
Yep.
How do you track that?
So firstly, the reason I restructured my organisation to put all of the support functions following the support review under one GM. So David Bryant's effectively responsible for ensuring that when he recruits his team, effectively honour the intent of keeping costs low. So his budget was significantly reduced and he's got to deliver on his budget. So budget delivery is one part, David's another part. Sorry, you are a tool in delivering these outcomes, David. But also we've got a robust strategy right across the organisation. We effectively start with the strategy that comes from council strategy. We have an organisation strategy and then that's clearly linked and cascaded right down to every individual performance agreement in the organisation. So that's how we insist on consistency across the organisation. So that is just the way we breathe and live now. It's a genetic process. And I don't know if you heard us talk about Connected, but that's effectively the program we run out. In terms of if someone wants to change things, we don't make it hard to change things because we want to encourage innovation, but we do require a degree of skin in the game that's got to be proven that it will actually deliver upside. And whether that upside is costing the same but bigger impact on the community or costing less and holding that impact on the community. So there are processes in place to do that. The challenge is level of service. Do you guys expect a level of service? If we change that, we bring it back to council.
But it's so essentially with what you said just in those last points though, that when a new staff person comes on board, takes over a new activity, a new service for council, if they change things, and it's not always a new person doing it, all those efficiencies can be lost because you want to empower that person to put their mark on things. Yeah,
but no, ultimately everything we do should be about delivering our strategic outcomes, and we're really religious about that. And so we have a very robust strategic framework within the organisation, and David's team, which is the key part of this, but Sean's team as well from a support function point of view, ensures that anyone that comes on board's job and purpose is about delivering our strategic outcomes. So it's got to all be aligned and it's religiously managed.
Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Just to answer ask some of those questions, the one that remains is when might you expect the initial investment of the 850 and the 150 to be returned through savings?
So I've had conversations with about 5 firms now, and they all have different pedigrees, and some of them scared me, some of them left me wondering. So I'll probably get down to 3 that were actually reasonably robust. All 3 of them believe that you can get savings in year 1, and I haven't reflected on these numbers. I don't think that's. I think they're being ambitious. But all 3 of them said that you'll be getting savings in year 1. So I've booked in savings in year 2 and 3, but I've also put in $1 million cost in 2 and 3 to affect that. So I've been very conservative. There will be more upside than the numbers included in here. We probably get the costs down lower. The agreement I had with Mayor Andrew in doing this is it won't affect the rates increase number, but it will mean that we'll pay down debt faster. So that's why we've kept it neutral. I'm hoping once we do the first review with the third party and they come on board, the first annual plan, they'll come along with a report. They say these we can get the savings, or there's a range of savings. The councillors will agree that range of savings, and then we will lock and load those savings in the annual plan. And then we're obligated as elected members and staff to deliver on those savings. So we want to crystallise it into the annual plan at the end of the first year to make it a robust challenge, and that holds everyone to account. I'll only put them in my KPIs as a delivery if council signed off on them, and so that's why we need to put it into the annual plan.
So given the comment that Councillor O'Leary made about similar kind of approaches to savings in the past, do you believe that you've got all the low-hanging fruit sorted, and that's why you're asking for money to get the more difficult savings, or do you?
So we've, sorry, Councillor O'Leary, Councillor Paulie, have you finished? I didn't mean to interrupt. Yep, so 2012 we shaved $15.4 million worth of costs out of the organisation. That was a combination, sorry, $10.4 million out of the organisation. Half of that was level of service cuts, and some of those are crept back in as councillors have been dissatisfied with the complaints we've received and the level of service communities perceived. And $5 million of that was actually restructuring and cost cuts. I came on board, and in my restructuring I offered up $1 million back to the organisation just through my restructuring of my GMs and certain functions. I killed certain departments and got rid of them, and that's enduring. Those departments haven't come back again. So that savings being banked into the annual plan, it was offered, all of that savings was offered up back to the council. That was $1 million. And then I did my support services review, and during the 2012 review, support services represented 33% of the organisation, but they got 50% of the cost cuts. Then I did my support services review, and I came back and I shaved another $1 million out of them. And so they're lean. I suggest we're in a position now where the organisation wobbles in places. And one of the challenges that all councillors are giving to me at stage is that we under-deliver on time, delivery of projects on time. And a large part of that to do is that we are probably lean in places. We're probably lean in places, and it's starting to show. But I think that all organisations need to be challenged financially, and I think all organisations need to have some sort of catalyst to think innovatively, and I'm suggesting I have the capacity to drive an innovative organisation. I just need a little bit of support in delivering on that with some third parties.
Well, can I be cheeky and ask you why this isn't business as usual? You know, that's what businesses do, always constantly look to be lean.
Because I do not have a department at all, because I cut everything to the bone.
So in becoming lean, you've become too lean to be further lean.
Yeah, so we've got to the point now that, and plus I've got a $5 million saving that I've got to find on top of this. So I've got $5 million in this year. That, I forgot about that. Sorry, David, you reminded me, and I was thinking, oh, here we go. What have I missed? Yeah, that's right. I've got $5 million worth of savings I've got to find this year. And to be honest, that challenge has come to me before. Why isn't this business as usual? Well, we drive it as business as usual, but sometimes there is value in having external benchmarking coming on board. Fonterra does it, ASB Bank's done it, BNZ's done it, Sport Waikato's done it. Every organisation looks externally for benchmarking from time to time and drives that, and it's an important aspect of making sure you're current. I believe my GMs are very good at what they do, and I think I've got some exceptional...
I think you've answered the question. Thank you.
No, I'm just pumping.
I can tell that, but just one further, last quick question. You know, you and I, as Chair of the Community Services, we've had some conversations about improving community engagement. You yourself have acknowledged that our community engagement does lend itself to further improvement. Is that in here? Is that where this sits? Or where's... because you were going to put some budget in.
We originally had in the first round of the budget... Sean, can you correct me on this? $250,000 for additional community engagement?
Yes, that's correct. So that isn't in the budget.
Yeah, that got cut.
Yep.
and that's basically trying to make the thing work. So we're trying to build our community engagement model on the cheap, and it's very lean. We have, don't get me wrong, we already have an engagement budget. We plan to increase it further. So we're trying different technologies, different ways of doing things, engaging with third parties, and so we will get there and improve it, but it'll be a slow burn rather than a big step. This program here, a big chunk of it is actually delivering to the community, so I see part of this will be community engagement, but it's not a specific budget to do more community engagement. What I want to do is make our contracts more community focused, so therefore our contracts affect greater level of engagement with the community.
So you wanted to put it in and you've taken it out? Is that how?
Yep.
You've decided to take that community engagement additional. So we can still have, because I still believe we need to do work, we can still have conversations about how we improve the methods and ways.
Yes, we'll do that. And you can also...
You're promising me that we can achieve that without any additional budget. We can do that.
Very slow burn approach, not a big step.
We need to make a reasonable step, though.
And if you wish to put more money in for community engagement, then you can put forward a motion to that.
No, I was just surprised. I thought it was in here because you yourself proposed it, and you acknowledged that we don't do so well at that.
I took some low-hanging, it wasn't actually low-hanging fruit, but we did make significant cuts before this numbers came forward, and that's one of the ones that unfortunately we had to cut.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rob.
Chair. Richard, so if I follow on from Paula, you're really telling us at the moment there's very little low-hanging fruit that you can immediately move in on and have that help you contribute to the $5 million savings that you're targeted you've targeted for in the budget?
That $5 million will be largely achieved by slowing things down, Councillor Rob. So I'll probably achieve that $5 million through management of vacant positions, optimising the mix between contractors and employees, and decisions like that.
So you'll do that without the external people?
I can do that $5 million. It is a challenge. We have probably, every year we have a budget, we call it stretch, whereby our total costs are greater than the budget. Yep. And that's because we get told by the elected members, you must deliver to this number. And that's not a bad challenge. I'm not having to dig at that. That's just what happens in every organisation. We call it a negative stretch, or a stretch, and we do that. And it means at times that we have to renegotiate our deliverables with elected members. And it means at times that our existing staff get overloaded because we haven't replaced positions. And it's not acceptable, but we have brought forward increased budgets in the past, and it would mean would legitimately mean an increase in our salary and wage budget if we would meet that challenge.
Okay.
But the last part of it is that Mayor Andrews challenged me to make that $5 million stick.
Yep, so it becomes permanent. Yep. Okay. So you mentioned in your prelim that you didn't think that, if, let's say we spend $1 million in year one, $1 million for the outsourcing work, you felt that the benefits wouldn't come back to the organisation until years 2 and 3.
And 4 and 5 and continuing.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, okay. But by that time we will be into the second round of the second $1 million, because this is $1 million in each year over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, you answer.
I suggest that I'll be able to cover that million. I think I can at least easily get $1 million a year. I say easily get, a little bit of different thinking. With spend that $1 million, I can get $1 million back. Yep. So even if I don't increase that $1 million saving and meet Mayor Andrews' challenge, I reckon there's net upside to the 10-year plan of at least $8 to $9 million. I think it'll be far greater than that.
Of the $3 million, based on the $3 million spend. So when we get to the end of the first year and let's say we've approved the $1 million for year one, and you're coming back now for the second $1 million, will you have, and of course that may not have rolled itself back into the organisation yet, will you be in a position before year 2 to tell us what you think those savings are going to be before we're being asked to approve the second $1 million and then in the third year the third $1 million?
Well, what I'll do is I'll probably come back at the end of the sizing process, bring a report back, say these are what the savings look like. If we invest this is the return we'll get, and ask Council to approve it and approve it into the annual plan, so then it's locked and loaded. So Council will have that opportunity, because I think the biggest concern that you expressed to me previously, we might have some great ideas, but how do we make it actually... Yeah,
and what's the timing for it, and what's the guarantee that the savings will roll into the organisation, particularly if it's years 2 and 3, after we've potentially spent $2 million of the $3 million.
Yep. That's
So
correct.
it's a matter of getting,
Yeah, so
getting the ducks in a row, I
I'll be
suppose.
asking for approval to proceed to stage 2 once we've spent the first $1 million. And that'll be the state. The risk there is that council may not buy into the changes, and then we've spent $1 million for no outcome.
Okay, last question. You say that you've got $5 million already rolled into the first year's budget of the long-term plan.
That's correct.
Are we able to identify where that is? Is it a one-line $5 million off, or is it a mixture of reduced costs or increased revenue, or
So there was, so the organisation over the last couple of years has had a $3 million efficiency stretch. So if we just go to section 2, page 83.
Oh, that's easy to find. Yep.
So we had previously called 3 million of the 5 million, which is talking about the a vacancy factor.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
So if you see the $3 million,
I'm aware that that's been in
Yeah.
past finance budget,
Yeah.
past finance
Yeah.
reports. Yep. Yep.
and the additional 2 million, we said that it would take us 6 months in the first year of the long-term plan to actually achieve that $2 million. So we have $1 million in year 1, and as a permanent saving, and then another $1 million.
Oh, yeah, I see.
And then another $1 million in year 2
Okay.
in perpetuity. So
Okay.
that adds up to the 5. So it's
Okay.
actually $4 million in year 1 and another
Yep.
$1 million in year 2.
So, Richard, just coming back to you on that staff vacancy one of 3 million, I've seen that over the years I've been on council, that we have had, not that figure, but figures that resemble that. You mentioned a little earlier that you're stretched with resources in terms of, even we notice that in terms of reports that come back to us and so forth. Is that $3 million likely to either continue that stretched resource, or is the stretching of the resource going to get worse? Oh, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So
Are we going to make it worse than what it is? Is it still going to remain?
It's got to be
there?
$5 million. So the stretch is now $5 million.
Yeah, but it's not all in.
It's 4 and 1.
council vacancy, is it?
Yeah, but ultimately, anyway, so at least 3 million will be, maybe some more.
Yep.
So that's a stretch, and that's there. What I'm hoping is if we do this reimagining local government scenario, is that we can get beyond that.
Okay, but we won't see that until years 2 and 3. the
Yes,
effect
that's
of
correct.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
So we might struggle to get the 5 million in the first year.
No, I'm going to deliver the 5. No, we'll
Okay.
get there. But then what I'm saying through reimagining local government, or reimagining the way we deliver our services in the future years, hopefully we build some capacity that we don't have to worry about it. So yeah, it's about future capacity we're building.
The penny's dropping. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
So I'm just looking at the Mayor's introduction here on page 3, when you challenged Richard, or the Mayor challenged you to save $5 million per year for the next 3 years. That is assuming this happens, is that right?
So the first $5 million is going to I have to do.
Yep.
If you adopt this budget, the first $5 million is delivered. The next $5 million, the next incremental lot to $5 million to bring it up to $15 million is subject to this $1 million investment.
Right. Okay. So if we're, look, I'm a reasonably simple man, but I'm also answer to a lot of ratepayers. Can't we just fund years 2 and 3 with the savings we make from year 1? So shouldn't we just?
Well,
fund
no.
one
So
year?
if you look at page 87,
Yeah.
so you look at page 87.
Oh, yep.
There's net savings of $7 million upside. So year 1 is being funded by the future years. So there's $1 million savings and costs in year 2, and $1 million savings and costs in year 3 netted off. And then that's at least a $7 million net upside to the ratepayer. What Andrew's asked me to do is make that a net. To be honest, it's about $100 million saving to the ratepayer over 10 years. And I just wasn't comfortable locking this in without having done the third-party work to validate my hypothesis on how we can deliver that.
Okay. In the briefing, you were talking about the appetite from other councils, because this is going to have. I'm assuming this is when you say reimagining. This isn't just moving deck chairs. This is big.
Yeah, and you actually raised a really good point. A lot of this will be looking at, well, not a lot of this, a chunk of this will be looking at how we deliver our services and collaborate with other local councils. And I've had conversations with Waikato and Waipa and discussed other opportunities for shared service. Blair has done an amazing job working with the local authority shared service in terms of building other stuff in. So I'm just trying to find Blair so he can confirm these. You've done an amazing job. Yeah, he is. He can confirm that. And I've also picked this up with Auckland Council. So I had a meeting last week with Auckland Council and said, what are the opportunities? You're a mega machine? What are the opportunities to leverage some of the great work you're doing? If you're spending X million dollars rolling a program out, how much more does it cost to include an organisation that's about a tenth of the size of you as part of that cost structure? And can we get the marginal approach to that? I've also talked about it with local government New Zealand, and they've actually taken, based on my challenges to them, a paper to the board suggesting that there is legs in doing something more collaboratively across the country, not just in the Waikato as well. So for the last 6 months been, and everyone that's been in a meeting with me will attest to this, pumping everyone that I believe local government needs a catalysing change to actually make the next step into what community needs.
Right, so you know the obvious next question is going to be, will they help pay for it? If LGNZ are going to benefit from it and roll out the great Richard Briggs Reimagine, shouldn't they be paying for it as well?
They'll pay for that aspect to it, but that's not just this. This is for me to look at this organisation.
Yeah.
If we set up an organisation, let's say we'll pick on a topic, accounting back office functions, something I know really well. Every council that contributes to that will pay their share of it. We won't be carrying the load for that. So like we do at the moment with valuation services through LAS and so forth, we pay our share. It generates a profit actually, so that we get our share back. So there's all those offsets and so forth. So we're not looking for this to, this will come up with some ideas for running it and doing it. Some of those ideas I can implement through our procurement processes and we can do on our own.
Right.
If some of the ideas come up about working collaboratively with our neighbours, then setting up that collaborative environment with our neighbours will mean they're going to have to pay for it as well. I'm not going to carry the load for other people, but I'm looking for support and driving the challenge out there. So that's effectively what it is. $1 million isn't big when you look at the fact that our budget's over $100 million. So it's really taking a large boot at it.
Yeah, I understand that. So you've talked with other CEOs about it around the, like your Taurongas and the likes.
Tauranga, Queenstown, Waikato, Waipa.
And are they putting something similar to their councils as well? Or?
Auckland, I probably find I'm by far the most ambitious with what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm doing a lot of my role is influencing others. Influencing others. So
Can I just interrupt?
Sure. Yeah.
If we're going to spend 2 hours on each one of 31 pages, we'll be here every day until Christmas, and we won't know where we're going. I need it to be short, sharp and precise, and I need a staff member not to be trying to sell himself, to come back with a short, sharp response.
Trying to sell myself.
We just stop and listen. We've had a session outside of this room on this. We've had this agenda for 5 days. I just need you to move quickly and bring up points that we haven't covered off before in other sessions, and short, sharp questions, because we I'm just worked it out. There's 62 hours if we spend 2 hours on each one of 31 proposals, and that means we haven't got time between now and Christmas.
No, good point. Fair enough.
Okay, so
if I could ask one more question, I'll give you 30 seconds to answer it. Is that okay? Would that be right?
I'm just saying, I want everybody to think, and this is about new information gathering.
Yeah.
And we have had a full session on this out of this room.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got one new question in 30 seconds. Just so I'm clear, what does a reimagined council look like to you at the moment? I mean, how different is this going to be?
I think I've explained that. Yeah. I can take it offline.
Okay, well, yeah.
Yeah, because it's more than 30 seconds.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. So would we expect to see overall council expenses dropping?
Yes.
So this year, next year, sorry, the next year will be lower and,
Year 2 onwards.
Okay, do you want to, so some costs won't drop because depreciation won't drop because you can't control that because that's additional assets. So by definition, I assume that has to go up.
Yes, so we're talking about direct operating, controllable operating costs.
So that would be things like wages and salaries. That would be things like operating expenses, which is, petrol and IT costs and those sort of things. Okay. So they'll actually, because we're getting bigger and bigger, so just to be quite clear, I would expect if we're getting bigger and bigger and you can keep expenses the same, that would be a success, I would have thought.
Yep.
But you're suggesting we could go down?
I think we can.
Okay. To what? And the other second question is, so to what extent does your success rely on, and you've talked about changing the way we deliver things. I would be a bit more brutal on that and say there are some things we shouldn't be doing. Are you thinking in your mind there are some things I've got to try and convince these guys we shouldn't be doing? And I'm not trying to spoil it for you, but I'm going to say, to what extent will it be, we just have to acknowledge that we're not a good provider of some things, other people can do it, or, because there's two ways, you're talking about changing delivery models, which I understand. You know,
Yes, that's all I'm talking about.
So we're only going that way, okay?
Yes.
So, and we're still going to achieve,
Yes.
hoping to achieve the same levels of service. So you're
Yes.
going to do this without dropping levels of service.
That's the goal.
Okay, Sean, back to you. We've finished the questions.
Okay, so then, so as discussed, what we're looking for now is a show of support for the proposal, and I think we've got it up on the board shortly. So it's a show of hands, and if we can just kind of keep the hands held up so that someone in governance can record those. So it's not a binding vote. We'll come back and do the formal one once we've been through all the proposals. So
if you're likely to support this when it comes to the vote, yes, because this is about we've got to balance the box at the end, so.
correct. All those in favour of this motion, informally.
Okay, Sean?
Leanne's recording it.
Okay, Sean, next paper.
Yeah, now I'm aware that we do have an external presenter for one of the papers, and I'm not sure, not here yet, sorry. So the Central City Park, Edward.
Well, we're not, all we're doing is a count of hands, so we don't need to know exactly who is what way.
It's not a vote.
Majority supporting it, is that all you want to do?
So Rob, what this is about is working out, now we can take that off the budget going forward, and we're trying to work out what the rates increase will be once everything's in and out at the other end.
So we can keep a running tally of, based on those indicative kind of show of hands, we can keep a running tally of what the impact on the financials will be.
Why don't we lock things in around?
Yeah, correct, yep. Okay, so I think we're moving now to the second one, which is the, yep, correct, council minimum wage, so that's on page 88. Sorry.
We'll just have a water break for 5 minutes while these guys get a bit of direction here, okay? It's just a bit of a decision time on how we, so just seriously 5 minutes to get a cup of tea and bring it back in if that's all right. what is it?
314 for the river
We're
plan
on page
extension.
314. 314? No.
314.
Okay.
River plan extension.
Page
Councillors,
3.
we're on page 314.
Yep, it is 314.
No, no,
We're taking us,
we're changing tax.
Okay, so elected members, if a paper comes through like Richard's, what's it called? Efficiency.
Reimagining local government.
I think if you're in agreement, we'll just vote on those as they come up. I mean, it's an obvious $15 million savings a year, $100 million over the thing. Why wouldn't we just vote it through and lock it in? And if things come through that are at or below the budget that's proposed, why wouldn't we vote on them as they come through and lock them in? And then the amendments will come through that are going to either lower that or put it up higher, and at the end it'll be a pool of money that's left for us to decide how to handle that. But if we don't lock things in as we go, it's going to take an awfully long time, and especially on the things that are quite straightforward. So are you comfortable with that? Okay. Yeah.
Enough on this. That look in the incident of the last one. Yes, it seemed reasonably overwhelming that most people supported it, though I didn't. That's fine. But there might be some that I'd be like, well, if that happens, I'm not so keen on that happening. That was the sort of detail we were being told we could work through. But other than that.
I think we'll get the motions and we'll get the amendments up on the board and we'll vote on them as we go. Otherwise, we're just going to be here forever.
So, Mayor Andrew, do you want to bypass on the questions?
No.
No, okay, that's fine.
No, the questions still have to happen. I was asking people to keep them short and precise. So, okay.
So how does it work if your support is contingent on something else down the track, though? You know what I mean? So, like, for example, something, if we take funds out of something to put into something else, how would that work under what you're proposing?
Yeah, because the funding that's left over, say an amendment comes through on, say, this one here to shave $10 million off. Well, there's 10 million through an amendment, and there's $10 million in the kitty. Okay?
Right. If anything's contingent and you believe that it relates to that, you raise it, and then the mayor may just park that one and we'll move to the next item so that we do it.
Come back to it.
You come back to that, which is effectively the model that we've got in place at the moment. So
we'll
it'll be a
just
bit of a hybrid.
Start locking some stuff down as we go, okay?
Yep.
I thought what we had agreed would have been better, for the very reason that if we come to the end and there's a pot of money left over, or we've overspent, and that will impact on the rates, that some views around the table may change, rather and being able to do that then, break for 5 or 10 minutes, be able to do that then, rather than passing a lot of motions, having the end come out at a 25% rates increase, for example, and then having to rescind all of those motions. I think that would be messy, but and I think that's where Councillor Bunting was going and Councillor Southgate, but you're the chair, so up to you. That's
All right. We'll get going on this presentation and I'll take that into account.
I'm going to hand over to Lance to introduce the team in a second. So I'm going to talk to this. There was basically two aspects to the resolutions that came through on in November. Were to bring back some designs. We had a budget of $50,000, but as per the email that I sent out and the concerns that were raised, we limited the initial investment in the designs until such time as this meeting had been progressed. Secondly, there has been some discussions about the Mayor's vision for that area with two landowners, and they've shared the vision with a couple of other landowners. So we're probably in a position where there's been no delegated authority for anything but just having discussions, but there's been no land purchases or anything else to that effect. There's been 3 buildings, so at the north end there's 4 buildings that the owners are willing to sell at some stage. Should count. They believe in the vision, they like where it's going, they'll be interested in doing it, and 1 building at the other end is the level of willingness at the moment. the paper probably reflects that. We very clearly put in there that this is more of a passive development over a reasonable period of time, and there's no intention to force anyone that owns a property to sell. What we do hope, though, is once we start progressing through this, and it's generally got a scalable nature, that those businesses or private property owners that are buying into the vision may offer it to council when they do decide to sell. So it's very much a scalable opportunity, is how this paper's now being pitched as a consequence. So thank you, and I'll hand over to Lance.
Thanks, Richard. I just want to introduce Brian White and Daniel Smith from Edward White's Architects. I think most of you have probably met either one or both of them before, and also you guys probably know Natasha Ryan, who's joined us, took over from Gina's role, and also Maria Barry's been working on this too over the last wee while. So look, I'm going to hand over to Brian. You should have received this presentation, but we're going to get Brian to run you through this today, and you'll be able to ask a few questions and that sort of thing, but Brian will be able to explain the work that's been done, and then as Richard said, there's potential phasing for this, which is reflected in the proposed budget, and there can be variations to that. Obviously, this is a project that's quite visionary, quite large, and obviously links to what we're doing at VOTR going forward. And obviously, also there's a discussion later on in the agenda around the regional theatre as well. So obviously a lot of moving parts to this, but I'll hand over to Brian and Daniel so they can take you through it.
Words you should have received. Where did we receive that?
Did you? Should have been emailed.
Well, we've got a copy.
It's the same as what you're looking at anyway.
Okay. So you'll get up on the screen, which is probably be a bit more visual than just the handout. So.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you about this. We were very excited about this project. I think the city's had a few good opportunities in the past to create strong connections to the river, and there's been, for various reasons, BNZ built where it is, and Sky City where it is, and all those sorts of things. So I guess here's another opportunity where the city could make a strong visual connection to the river. I guess VOTR, it's about resolving a whole lot of level differences. There's the lower river path, there's the upper promenade, and then there's the city, and we're trying to tie and link all of those different levels together. This one here gives us an opportunity to really create a strong visual link from the main street to the river, and it's about creating that sense of openness. As we looked at the design, we were quite interested in things that are not necessarily unique to Hamilton, but are definitely a feature of Hamilton. So one of those is the river system, and it's got all of these gullies and tributaries that feed into the Waikato River. And we used that as a generator in some ways to inform a design possibility. So here's the proposal, and I'll give you a bit of context just to locate ourselves. So to the south, we've got the proposed theatre site, and that opens directly onto the new proposed park. We've got Victoria Street. We've got the buildings through here that Richard was mentioned earlier, and some of those have been removed. There's two heritage buildings to the northern end of it, and we've retained the facades of both of those buildings. And we've also extended onto the side of this one here where the Dold building is at present. And you can see behind that, in fact I'll zoom in for a little bit more clarity. You can see behind that we've got the VOTR, the entry there, the openings, and actually we've got an opening tonight for Banh Mi, who are shifting in there. So it's really turning into a lively space through there. But it's a slightly different experience. It's more of a laneway sort of feel. You've got eateries along the sides and active edges. This here is about creating a sense of openness and strong connection to the park. If you look on the top there, obviously we've got the river flowing past, and you can see the way the VOTR at present comes and forms that natural amphitheatre. And those different levels, they flow around into the levels that we've created here. And we've used a few techniques, for example, pulling the balustrades down so that when you're actually standing on these upper levels here, you're not looking across into a balustrade, you're actually looking straight over the top of those. And then as we sort of considered the sight lines down to the river, one thing that we observed in VOTR, when you look on an angle, you actually get a lot longer view of the river than you do if you're looking directly perpendicular to it. So that sort of helped drive the idea of creating these angular views down towards the river.
And looking at the natural river flow and how, looking at the riverbanks and how that actually is formed. And I guess that's informed the design a little bit, pulling back in, allowing us to not cut into that overhang, the quite steep site that Victoria on the river sits at the moment. So this is pulling back a little bit and creating a bit more of a plaza space in between some potential commercial activities.
So
The 6 townhouses,
the
sorry.
6,
Well, where's the townhouses?
okay, the 6 townhouses, they sit through here at the moment. We've got a final page which shows exactly where they are in relation to what we're proposing.
This is kind of this is the long term.
So what happens to Embassy Park? Is that
Can we just get through the presentation and then ask questions? Because a lot of these questions are going to be asked through the presentation.
So I'll just respond to that as we sort of explain it. We're proposing to put commercial activity underneath these raised terraces, with the exception of the area that's currently Embassy Park. Obviously that's a reserve, and there's a whole lot of things that go with trying to build on that area. So I'll quickly take you through the whole presentation, and then we can go back and zoom in on areas that you'd like to. This is how we'd see the lower area feeling, and you can see that
It's part of the upper promenade, like the upper promenade links right through the city.
Yeah, so that's an extension of what we've created at VOTR. There's room to ride your bike along there. We've made it really, really wide, so it's about 12 metres wide at the moment, which gives people a significant amount of space. They can dine right next to the river. There's also space in front of the individual tenancies that you could have seating, and then you've got room for people to cycle and walk through that area as well. And this is sunken down from street level. Yeah. So if you can imagine the path that currently runs in front of Sky City, it's set down at that level there. So it's one level down from the main street. This describes the way the circulation patterns through the site work. So you can see there the idea of cutting in on an angle. And something we didn't want was ever an instance where there was a dead end. We wanted people to be able to come down and have loops and to be able to create journeys rather than going down, stopping, and then having to walk back on yourself. So the whole path is set up about those journeys and those linking routes. This is a view looking down one of the cuts towards the lower level there. And that demonstrates some of the other circulation. You can see the circulation that's occurring through VOTR. And we've also taken this diagonal path through here, which links directly with the back of VOTR and runs up towards the end of the Riverbank Lane, because we think over time that's going to be a really strong path as well. This is the view from the upper terrace. You can see the way that these are set down slightly. It's a very similar language to what we've got happening at VOTR, and just creates lots of spaces for people to sit and enjoy views of the river. This diagram here speaks to the various zones.
Green spaces.
Yeah, green space was something that was very much a driver, and we've created a significant amount of, a significant amount of green space outside the theatre, through the centre here, and then through this area here we've got a combination of an extension of what we call the southern lawn at VOTR. It comes around the corner here. We've also created space to have a half-court basketball court, and then an area for a playground, and then you can see the extension through VOTR here, and then some commercial activity occurring behind those historic buildings. And we're very pleased with this image here. This sort of describes the feel of what it would be like to be down in that space next to the edge of the river. We've got at present about 1,000 square metres of commercial space on that lower level that you could have a combination of hospitality and retail.
Can I just interrupt? I need a time extension, 5 hours. Do we have a seconder? Gary? All those 4? Any against? Gary? Thank you.
That would be going for 5 hours.
No, it's 5 hour extension. Doesn't mean we have to use it, it just means we... Yeah. Sorry, keep going, bro.
Shall I slow down?
No, keep going.
We're joking. Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah, right. Okay, this shows the active edges, and one that we don't want to forget about are the faces of these historic buildings on the the western side. And one effect of doing this is that those buildings are going to become a lot more prominent than what they are at present. Also, the front of the theatre here, you know, on any given day with 1,100 seats in there, you could have 1,100 people all coming outside and congregating, and you actually need quite a bit of space to do that.
Yeah, you think of some of the key parks around other cities like Aotea Square and Federation Square in Melbourne, and they all have a big park that sits out in front of, or a square that sits out in front of their key arts precincts. So we kind of see this as a potential opportunity for that.
This drawing here shows the 30-metre height difference that you have between the river level and this main street. And you can't see much up there, so I'll zoom in on it a bit. And you can see the way that you can come down from the main street, down into this lower sunken area, and the way that opens onto the edge of the river. And fortunately, we're pulling back far enough that we don't need to have balustrades along the side of that, which we've managed to create in the middle of the VOTR. Anywhere else along the edge of the river, the drop-off's so steep that you sort of can't really get away without having those. Okay, and this diagram here speaks of the connections to the wider network of public spaces. We've got the Western Rail Trail ending at Norriswood Park. We think down the track there's a fantastic opportunity down Ward Street to enrich the urban environment there. There's the width to do that. That's great. And then obviously you've got the Ward Street, yeah. And I'm currently looking at some pretty exciting development at the back of Kmart through there, which will significantly change the way that feels. And then this is the journey coming through the city, Civic, and then Garden Place, coming down through here, VOTR, and then linking down into this park, and then the opportunity to create a bridge across the river. So everything flows together, and we think it creates some great opportunities for the city. Now, going back to the question about the current buildings that are there. So this is where the apartments at present sit, and this is the property behind there. And this is a plan that we did to demonstrate how the project could be phased. So you can see the various phases at the bottom there and how they could work. So it doesn't all have to be rolled out in one. It could be something that we take over time.
To get to the end, you have to get rid of those apartments there.
Yes. Yep.
So that house that's on the other side of the apartments, is that not in that land area? There's quite a Mexican-looking or a Spanish-looking house, yeah.
Yeah, that house is part of Mitch's property, which is going to be part of the Waikato Regional Theatre.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's an overview of the project as it stands. I'll leave it on this one. Yeah. Questions are welcome.
Yep, Deputy Mayor.
Could our river plan people join us as well? Because this is as you're aware, there was a previous firm of architects and I'm the chair of the river plan working group. And for a start, I'm interested in the river crossing, but what I want to do is I see where you're going on this and how that relates to the river plan, but I want you to explain to me how the connections move from there down to the Victoria Street bridge. So I'm wanting a wider question. This is an integral part of a revised river plan, Central City plan. I guess the first question, what account have you taken of the river plan documents of the previous work we've done to date for a start? Because obviously I'm looking at the Hamilton Theatre connection through to Victoria Bridge, the museum, and I'm...
When you say Victoria Bridge, Martin, beg your pardon, you mean the Anzac Bridge, don't you?
Anzac Bridge, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So we're fortunate to have done work right along the riverbank now, and we looked more recently at how we would connect in front of the theatre before the theatre was actually finalised in that location. So we're familiar with the levels and the way the paths work through that area there. And we think there's some fantastic opportunities to connect into those paths that run past the notable trees and around at the back into Sapper Moor. I mean, some of that depends, like further down, depends on some private stakeholders as well, you know, the land in front of the restaurant and those sorts of things.
Because obviously what I'm trying to get at, the next component is how, you know, what is the final design of the Hamilton Theatre and how the access walkway goes past the theatre. And then I'm a little bit nervous in terms of a dotted line. There at the moment is a clear proposal for a pedestrian bridge, not in this 10-year plan, obviously could be privately funded down the track. You see what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to reconcile our current river plan with this in terms of the links. Now, the central city and how you can reshape that, I get. But it's virtually, I guess, from the Hamilton Theatre to Anzac Bridge, and then I've got some questions which I need to ask Lance around what O&M is going to achieve for us in terms of the link to the Wellington Street, which is another proposal, beach, the gardens, and also a question around the Muni bars.
I think we can get some fantastic connections with those other proposals, and I think the levels are going to work really nicely to be able to tie into those as well.
We're keen to work in with what's happening there already, like on the river plan, and especially the guys, the architects that are designing the theatre. Like that integration can definitely work. This was more about looking at the upper promenade and the connection to the city. But yeah,
But what's crucial is correct me if I'm wrong, is understandably previous river plan proposals roughly to prioritise this opportunity if it comes to pass, right? But what I need to understand from O&M is how do we achieve, and I guess this is to Lance, how do we still achieve what we're trying to do in terms of getting a good link to the Hamilton Gardens, Wellington Street Beach? Now that may be another, tell me if that's another discussion, but it has to be in the LTP in terms of signage, vegetation clearance, etc. Because in a sense, as I'm understanding this, we're, if you like, redirecting, the proposal is to redirect funding from what was going to be a staged river plan over 10 years to prioritise this aspect of the river plan, central city transformation.
So if you ever look in the proposal on page 315, it talks in
315, yep.
and 316 and 317, it talks about the proposed finances for this, and obviously is operating expenses as well as the capital, and it talks about building write-off. So around the O&M and where it relates to what you're talking about, Councillor Martin, is the vegetation management plan rollout still included in this?
Yep.
$300,000 a year, so that we get all those view shafts and everything we've talked around those actually locked in right across, you know, and especially from Claudelands Bridge down to pretty much past the museum, where, you know, there's been a lot of discussion around that, and Paul has brought up erosion issue, so obviously, you know, quite a bit of work being done there. We've had Arbor Lab doing that. The other thing is also there's money in there for an OPEX, obviously, for the master planning process for this and as Brian and Daniel have said, to link in with the design of the theatre. My understanding is that the levels do actually work quite well together, and these guys are aware of that. And I'd leave that to the experts. And the other thing is there's $300,000 put in to look at that feasibility study around that swimming area and the other amenity of that Wellington Street beach area.
So you see, I'm trying to get I've got the immediate picture, and this is, you know, obviously directing the resources into the central city transformation / river plan in the CBD between the Claudelands Bridge and the Anzac Bridge. I get that. We've got also the Angela O'Leary project in terms of the signage that we want to actually get from the Anzac Bridge through to the gardens and vegetation clearance, and obviously how that might integrate with the Wellington Street beach proposal. So what I'm trying, so that's one question, and I think you're going to tell me that's going to come out of O&M. Is it, Lance?
Well, there's actually an unfunded proposal in here that come out of the River Plan Task Force.
Yeah.
So some of those components are in there. But until we actually do, you get into detailed design and detailed estimates, then it's a bit hard to say whether or not we'd spend all that operating money, or we could actually squeak some things like the signage. And I think Vanessa Williams brought up probably the wider issue around that signage rollout right across the CBD.
And a bronze version now, just and without at all predicating democratic debate about the future of the municipal pools. Where are we at on that? Because obviously we're coming to a crunch decision whether the pools get demolished, and obviously that will make a huge impact in terms of that part of the Ferrybank area, in terms of the park around the bandstand.
So the operating budget that you considered yesterday in the community area of it, sorry I can't quote the page, but there's $1 million in there for demolition of the municipal pool, so to take all that away and then to turn that into pretty much green space until there's some further thought around what we might do in that area if we want to actually develop that area in the future. So between our operating budgets and proposals in here, there's quite a bit of linkage, and obviously linkage with what's happening with the theatre proposals.
So to be helpful, this is a comms team work. So what I'm trying to achieve here is to integrate the Mayor's proposal, which is, if you like, in my view, a kind of revised Central City Transformation River plan with these other ingredients. So I'm trying to sort of not just see this as an isolation one-off, but how literally this relates to the long term. And it means that we, in the next 3, 4, 5 years, are reshaping things in terms of priorities. But in terms of my question, particularly around what I've asked you, I think this plus the links to Hamilton Gardens plus Wellington Street Beach, I will argue is still a very significant, just correct me if I'm wrong, commitment to our river plan, albeit it's expressed in a slightly different way.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. On page 314, we've got Andrew's recommendation. I think it says Mayor's, so I assume that's yours, Andrew. Total capital expenditure 20 million for the first 5 years. Presumably that's for purchase of buildings and landscaping and all turning it into that. Is that right?
Yes. And you'll see under Roman numerals.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
3.
So we're getting to that. Okay, so that's what that's.
That's for clearance of the building. So basically demolition.
So purchase first, because we've got to buy them. We've got to own them to do this first. Yeah. So, and then it's still called. I'm just interested. It's called operating expenditure for Romans 2, of $300,000 a year. That's for you guys and some other professionals to develop a plan and whatever that means.
Yeah. Page 317, Gary, in the their first year 900,000, so it's 300 for the master plan, 300,000 for the vegetation management plan, and there's also 300.
Where's that?
Page 317 in the box in the table.
Oh,
year
where's
1.
Vegetation plan?
Total, and it's under total operating expenses, the 900,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And there's also 300,000 to look at that feasibility study around the swimming area and the amenity area around the Wellington Street Beach, around Hayes Paddock.
All right, sorry, and you might, okay.
Ongoing in those operating expenses you'll see in there.
Okay. Then in Romans 3, operating expenditure of $3 million in the second year. So that's operating expenditure. What's that? So that's operating expenditure. That's not capital expenditure to build things. That's electricity or wages or mowing lawns or what's the $3 million in operating expenditure?
That's around
demolition and costs.
Demolition costs.
But that's capital work, isn't it?
No. So like the demolition of the municipal pool is $1 million. That's in operating, not in capital.
Isn't that part of developing the asset, making the asset? Okay, all right.
We've had advice from the accountants around accounting practices, and Richard will be able to, or David will be able to fill in further on that.
I always thought demolition was part of your capital cost.
If there's an asset that's left behind and you can use it as the foundations for a new asset, effectively most of the demolition is going to end up as green space in this case. Maybe that some of the buildings down the back, if they're demolished in the end, form part of the commercial premises, you could capitalise, but you could also end up over-capitalising and have to write it off at a later stage anyway.
Okay. So then it's $7 million the next year. So what are we doing there?
Well, that's
So,
part-
so
that's-
this is,
that's
so
part
just
of
be
that.
clear, this is not a subset of the 20 million in Romans 1, is it?
No,
This is on top of
correct.
that.
And then Roman numerals 4, there's the asset write down.
What? Sorry.
That's for demolition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all removed. So that's, so they're both for demolishing, are they?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's other thing, which is a write-off of the building. So we've paid $20 million for these properties. We've now smashed them, so to start off with, we had $20 million on our balance sheet called properties. We're now writing that off because we've blown them to smithereens. They've gone to demolition heaven. And we're doing that over 3 years or something? 2, okay. Inconsequential OPEX, which is very small. And what's that? So that's mowing the lawns and
So as Brian said,
picking up the rubbish
if
and
you go to that interim, if you go to the last slide, he had the interim, and that's not quite all of it, but if we went to, and even if those, the flats were gone, then if we went to an interim where there's a grass space and some minimal hard structures there, then obviously we need to mow the lawns and
there'll be a public, is there a public toilet in there somewhere?
there'll
There'll be a
yeah, there'll be all of that. So,
So those sort of things
all
that
they're 55 grand a year is
will
basically
cover
for
that.
maintenance of that
Okay.
area. So, yeah.
Okay, so we're of course asking staff to come back with a business case.
Just pointing out, just to be really clear,
That's what I'm trying, that's what I'm seeking,
yeah,
so
yeah,
good.
the final long-term vision that Brian and Daniel took us through with the shops and those sorts of things underneath the park, then this budget won't achieve all of that, and part of the view is that be looking at some potentially some private partners in that.
So, okay, so presumably, this will now then go back, will it then have to change into reserve? Will it become a reserve, will it? Or is it going to be, we're going to keep it as normal?
No, it couldn't become a reserve. It will get too messy with the commercial side that is
So
proposed for
because
it.
you want to, you talked about, I guess, cafes and things like that.
Yeah.
You want some tenancies in there,
Yeah.
and that's the private sector.
Yep.
Would we be there, we would be, and this might be too much detail for today, but
Could
presumably.
be multiple ways that could operate.
So we could own
that's the
them and be the
fall through.
tenant,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So it could be like, what's the veranda or something like that, okay. All right, and then there's an operating expenditure. Now this, Hayes Paddock is miles, well, in my view, is miles away from here. It's on the other side of it is on the other side of the river. So where's that come into this?
So,
Why is that part of this project?
So as Martin outlined, we've put this up, so this combines an expanded vision of the rollout of the river plan, but it also incorporates some of the components that the task force worked through, and there's another proposal, I'm not sure what the page is, which talks about the other priorities that the task force looked at. But so this combines some of that as well, because obviously vegetation management plan's been a priority, and obviously looking at Wellington Street Beach has been a priority as well.
Okay. That $300,000 in year one, 18-19, that's a feasibility. So will that look at the safety or what needs to be done in the river or around the river or the beach to do what?
Yeah, all of that, and around swimming, and you remember in the river plan there was the idea of
A rotating restaurant?
well, making it safe for people. How do you do that as a floating pontoon that breaks the flow of the river? The water quality issues, there's a whole bunch of consenting issues, obviously working with Tainui, and then obviously the actual land area as well, and what sort of structures you may or may not need. If we put in a floating pontoon, do you need lifeguards? You know, what's all the liability issues, all those sorts of things.
Andrew, and I guess this might be for you, Andrew. Why is that part of the? I see them as quite separate. So do you have to have the D? Why did you put them together? So I'm talking about the Hayes
No, I'm
paddock.
quite comfortable for that to come out of the motion.
Oh, and that's not a deal breaker for me. I'm just wondering what the logic was. I'm sorry, I'm not being political here at all. I'm just wondering what the logic is of tying the two together. Because they're quite a way away from each other. on
Yeah,
opposite
no,
sides
that
of
doesn't
the-
need to be a part of this.
I mean, doesn't change my view on the thing, but it didn't quite fit. Okay, thank you for your question answers.
Councillor Inge.
Thank you. It did surprise me on page 315, the commentary under heritage considerations, because when this idea first came up, I think I understood certainly that there was one or two heritage buildings in the area, and now I read that from Hood Street to Garden Place, that there are many more heritage buildings in there. So what kind of hurdle really do we need to get over if this project went ahead? Lance?
I think paragraph 10 covers most of that.
Well, no, it doesn't tell. My question is... my question is, look, I was surprised at the number of buildings that actually have some heritage status, because this says here that basically the entire area is special character from Hood Street to Garden Place. So that is telling me that there are significant hurdles to get over for demolition of not only the two buildings that we were originally told had heritage status, but possibly a whole lot of other buildings in this area as well. And how extensive of a hurdle is it to go to Heritage New Zealand and say we want to knock down some heritage buildings? What's that process look like? How long does that take? What does it involve?
Look, I won't be able to comment on that because it's not my area of expertise, but in general terms, my understanding is the special character when you talk about numerous buildings from Hood Street is the generality of what's in those areas. It's referring to that rather than the actual individual buildings, but then there's obviously individual buildings which have are listed as heritage items in the district plan, which in this design, my understanding is that they've been kept. Is that right, Brian?
And the heritage facades rather than buildings, just testing that.
Yeah, so this area through here, there's the building that Mexico's in at present, and the one next door to that, the white building. Both of those are actual heritage buildings.
So while it's not my area, I have asked some questions on the issues here. The two buildings that have the heritage are identified through the district plan would require specific consent associated with those. The other comment around the nature of the street was from the heritage team. It's not a specific consenting issue, it's more in response to the heritage plan and the strategy there to reflect what they were hoping to aspire to.
Okay, so to our knowledge, and it should be 100% knowledge because we should know, we maintain the list of heritage buildings as well. There are only actually two in here. It's just about whether we are prepared to lose a certain character from the 1900s of how buildings were built and created back then.
That is correct. I'd also add that because there's work in the bank, there's likely to be an archaeological process that will need to go through, but that's pretty standard in this area.
Yeah. In year one, possibly to Lance, in year one there's 900,000 operating expense and 5 million capital. I'm assuming in the 900,000 there is all of the geotechnical work that's going to need to happen, because I believe we were told at some meeting that the land instability there could be very high in terms of a risk.
Yeah, so there'll be master planning, there'll be all of that. You'll get into design, and some of that will flow over into year two as well. And obviously the capital is what we explained before, around obviously purchase of buildings. And part of that 900,000 was also vegetation management and also the feasibility study. But you're right, yes, there's all of that. And as we've experienced with VOTR, obviously there's been the archaeological, there's been issues around the geology of the area and the natural geology, and then as we found at VOTR there was some man-made geology with things that
Waikato Times?
The Waikato Times building that had gone down the bank, so there'll be all of that as well.
Last question, have you approached any of the external people that worked on the river plan to see how they feel about this replacing the river plan?
No, not at this stage.
So are we planning to do that?
Yes, and the task force needs to get together. Obviously, we wanted to test this through this process first, and then obviously, if it didn't get legs through the draft LTP, then we'd continue having discussions about the current river plan, whatever's decided. If this did, then obviously there'd be a closer conversation.
And in your understanding, Lance, does this essentially replace the outcomes that we were seeking with the river plan, as the Deputy Mayor has alluded to, that this is a revised new river plan?
Well, this
Otherwise we'll have two, won't we?
This revises the rollout of that. So it is a proposal that adds to what's in the river plan, but it has got a couple of components in it, as Councillor Gary explored.
So is the river plan still, if this goes through, does the river plan still survive? What happens to the river plan?
The river plan survives until such times as council chooses to revoke it. That's why the term used in the description is river plan extension. So it's been treated as an addition to, and the underlying river plan is retained until such times as council votes otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you. Question, before the river plan was adopted, the strategy went through significant public consultation and pre-design. What has this one gone through? What's happened in this case?
Around public consultation?
Yeah, because there was several...
At this stage, none.
None. So this hasn't been socialised with any of the public prior to coming to this council?
No, but councillors were aware of that in the previous report back.
The intent from the Mayor in this case was to seek the funding first before we do the consultation, rather than do funding with the community and then not have budget to do the work, was the instructions for us in preparing this.
I'm sure he'll speak to that in his debate. Who can I have some... We did look at some maps before the design. Can we have some on the record who owns the buildings within the vicinity of this project and when did they purchase those buildings? Are we able to have that information publicly available?
How is that relevant?
It is relevant. It's relevant to me. I would like that information. I can't know if it's relevant until I get it.
Who owns the buildings and how long those owners have had them? I mean, that's all public information that's available to anybody, but I don't see the relevance of that to this discussion.
Okay. And my last question is, Martin, you did an excellent job at funding the River Plan Task Force group. I was on it and we discussed many things and went on many walkabouts. What role did you play in this new proposal?
I played a role purely with the rest of you as elected members when we gave the Chief Executive the authority to go and do appropriate scoping. I also understand that our heritage team they presented some ideas to the workshop the other day, which I unfortunately, couldn't attend. I would anticipate that there's an issue of funding envelope. Then there's the issue of actually revisiting the detail, both in terms of the heritage presentation that was given in the workshop and the river plan. So I think there's two issues to me: is the money, there's this proposal, and whether this proposal is the final version or whether there is modification thereof. And obviously I will certainly be wanting some discussion and clarification, as I've alerted the Mayor to, in terms of some heritage aspects as well, and hence my other questions around. But no, I've had no role apart from giving the Chief Executive the mandate to go away and to look at some options.
Correction and respect, I did attend that. The last question is, in terms of strategic planning and attributing budget to it, is it normal to put budget before an agreed strategy? Is that normal to create a budget and then fit the strategy to it, or?
That's not a question anyone here can answer. We've seen in the past plans put up no budget. We've also seen budgets put up and the plan follows and go hand in hand. So, you know, I've always made it clear there's no point putting up plans without a budget that goes with it, and that's my style. The two go hand in hand, they go together.
Fair
but
enough.
That's not necessarily the right way. That's the way that I operate. Other people may operate other ways.
And fair enough. And in this instance, this idea is, the genesis of this idea is yours. You've developed it because you see this as an alternative vision to the river plan.
I've been working on this for 3 years.
But the other plan was adopted by council, wasn't it? And you would have had, as a previous member of this council, you'd have had the opportunity to debate that at the time.
That plan, there's existing Victoria and the River. I took members of the last council down there one at a time, showed them the site, got the support, we got it voted through, we developed that park, and at the time I showed each member my vision for the area of buying the buildings next door, demolishing them, connecting Victoria Street to the river, and the failure that we did. The failure
so you clearly feel you have a mandate.
The failure that we didn't do that when we had the opportunity, when we built the BNZ building, and we didn't purchase at the time the old post office. So it's been an idea of connecting the river to the water since I was a child, and I believe that most of Hamilton's always talked about turning the river around, turning the city around to the river.
I'm not knocking you for vision, but I'm just trying to get a handle on the process. So therefore you believe the mandate to turn the direction of previous council and propose this, didn't you? You felt that you wanted to bring this new vision.
Like I said, this vision was this individual councillors here were aware of this vision from before the Victoria and River Park. At the time it was going to be commercially developed, and that's what was being discussed around this table at the time. I couldn't see the sense in that. I couldn't see how it could be developed. I couldn't see that the stability of putting the type of building that we were talking about, and 10 years of negotiation, I think, with one of the big developers in New Zealand to do something with that site, and agreements we had on that site to lock us in with that development so we couldn't even do anything with our own land, needed to be unwound, and it has been unwound.
I think you've gone beyond answering my question, but thank you.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't really part of the River Plan Task Force, but I attended most of their meetings, and I just wondered what happened to how far we've gone with the pontoon and the connection with the river, and I have to ask you there, Lance, and also with where's the $1 million Donny Trust, what's happening with that? Okay, thank you, Natasha.
So we undertook to feedback on the Donny Trust Fund. We haven't had written confirmation, but actual indications are that that may not be available for this particular proposal, but that's not been confirmed yet. And the other question was around the status of the jetty and the pontoon, the temporary upgrade, and that we're progressing through this year's budget.
Okay, and did we agree on the pathway as well? I mean, doing up the pathway up to the museum, I think, just make it easier for any everybody to come up that way.
Yeah, so we've got a program this year with that 1 point.
Yeah, we have the money there, haven't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that still will be done.
So there's no proposal to change this year's fund.
Thank you. That's all I want to know.
Councillor Rob.
Chair, thank you for the presentation today. I take it that the restaurants and the commercial buildings that are envisaged in the plan are not included in the $36 million capex cost, which I read as the 20 plus the 3 and 7 million. The 4 and the $8 million. So restaurants, the cost of building the restaurants are quite separate.
Yeah, that's been answered earlier.
Okay, so how us the architects is, in terms of the development, how would you partially develop the park without building the restaurants? Because you did mean we could get on with the work without, and you had a plan there without demolishing all of the buildings, and I assume now without the restaurants. Or the restaurants and the commercial buildings.
Yeah, that's right. So the restaurants, they all sit under the green space that's shown on this plan here.
Yep.
Yeah, so there wouldn't need to be any hard surfaces that'd have to be redone. It's just an extension of those hard surfaces and obviously the excavation. The biggest logistical thing there would be actually working out how to do the earthworks once you had finished surfaces through there. So probably some of those finished surfaces may need to be sacrificed to get in to do the earthworks, but there's not really much work that you'd be undoing to redo it to get the commercial. Does that answer your question?
So they'd kind of be like hobbits, little hobbit buildings, would they? With the grass over there.
Yeah. You wouldn't actually build that lower level first.
Yeah,
You'd come in, you'd do the finishes on the upper level.
Okay, I think I understand. Yeah.
Excellent.
So question around: is there an appetite? And you guys won't know the answer to this one. Is there an appetite for external funding on this? Apart from, I'm saying here, external from the council funding it.
Yes, there is. There has been a number of. I think previously, when the mayor did his initial briefing on the 18th of October, mentioned that he had discussed contributions from private sector. I'm not too sure how confidential they are.
I just want to know: is there interest?
There's been
I mean, whether the interest is by way of grant or
there's been a
JV. Whatever
No, there's been a pledge of financial contribution as a donation towards the development, yes.
Okay. And that's substantial? I mean, we're talking big bickies here.
Yep,
are we talking?
At the moment, it's a pledge of approximately $2 million.
Okay, thank you for that. Have we, as the buildings get demolished and it's turned into a park, council will lose the rate revenue that it currently receives on those properties. Have we taken, and I assume because it's right in the middle of our city, it's probably a substantial amount?
We haven't reflected that in
the modelling. Okay. Are we talking of, what, $500,000 or $1 million a year in rates off those buildings?
I can't. I can find that out. I think.
Necessarily.
I think your two numbers probably represent a range, and I think that's a reasonable assessment, Councillor Pascoe. $500,000 to $1 million.
There's some quite substantial buildings along
the other aspect is that if council does progress and we do end up owning some of these buildings, a number of these buildings have leases in place.
Yeah, understand that, and they'll run their course.
That's right. Like we said, this is effectively a passive plan. We're not looking at being aggressive in terms of rolling out.
So the intent would not be to buy somebody out of their lease, because we would be in haste to do the development.
That's correct, and that's probably part of the reason that this is really awesome, bonza, but
okay.
But the challenge will be that once council approves this and we have a better understanding, we would actually look at what the proper phases look like, and with the additional funding that's been approved already to do the designs, we'll flesh that out a bit more and get that phasing right, what it looks like over what period of time, and it may well be anything on the ground for 5 years, and we have to slide these budget constraints out a little bit, but for the time being, we've put it in based on the best guess, but we needed a lot more work. Very much a tentative approach. We wanted to get the funding first and then progress.
Okay, so if we did go ahead with the funding, it would be a relatively easy exercise for us to work out what the holding cost would be presumably with the interest
Yeah, absolutely,
cost
yes.
and the rental, the lease income that we would be getting in the meantime
Yes.
from that.
Yes.
Okay.
And the other thing just to add is we would only be transacting things at our procurement practices. So supported by evaluations and so forth.
Oh, yeah, yep.
We're not looking at paying over the odds and stuff like that. We're
If
buying on market. That's why we're talking about a passive approach. Someone's interested in selling, will be an active member in terms of engaging to buy it.
Okay, so it could take a number of, if we did adopt that, I could see that at some point in time there will be a last man standing there.
Yep.
Might.
We have all the necessary, at least verbal indications from the first group of phase 1 building owners to progress at that level.
Okay, so
But then the rest of it gets a little bit more passive from that point.
Okay. Now, if we did go ahead with the purchase and the land eventually becomes parks and reserves, have we considered the possibility of taking some other city land that is currently parks and reserves and turning that into residential and or commercial as a sort of a swap to pick back the rate revenue that we would have potentially lost? And I'm thinking here of as an example, and thinking only aloud here, of perhaps that area in Victoria Street that overlooks Grantham Street.
Yep, not at this stage. So that's, if we were to bring back a detailed business case, that would be all the considerations for that. But we haven't at this stage.
Is that something that should be considered, given that we're turning commercial land into parks and reserves?
Given the nature of this.
And we're turning away some pretty good revenue streams that we would not want to try and compensate back into our own revenue budget for those rates to be reinstated elsewhere?
We'd have to bring that forward as a business case to go to the next phase, but ultimately this will be commercial land. It's all commercial activity underneath effectively a reserve roof, and you can't distinguish based on height to have reserve at the top and commercial at the bottom. It has to all be commercial.
Okay. So the land will always remain commercial, will it?
That's right.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Deputy Mayor, did you want to?
Oh no, I think just obviously all this has been authorised through the resolution of council when we gave you permission.
18th of October.
Yes, and obviously what we're discussing today is just confirm, Mr Chief Executive.
Sorry.
What we're discussing today is the funding package.
Yes.
We are not, and we have a situation of willing buyer but willing sellers, and in some cases unwilling sellers. We are not finalising the actual final detail, and confirm we're not finalising the discussion we'll obviously have about some heritage aspects and streetscape aspects. That will be subject to further discussion and report. The only issue in a 10-year plan, Mr Chief Executive, is that we're actually putting a funding envelope to pursue a particular concept, but the detail will be subject to further discussions.
Absolutely.
Thank you. End of my questioning.
Councillor Jeff.
Of course, and obviously public consultation. Absolutely.
Yeah, look, I just...
You're a good teacher, Gary.
Mayor Andrew, I just wanted to signal that I've got an amendment I'd like to put up when we're ready.
Okay, so we'll put up the staff recommendation without D, and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. And who's your seconder?
Siggy.
Siggy, okay. Without D. Without D, yeah. Yep. Okay, Jeff, while we're waiting, do you want to talk through your amendments, because we've got the motion here in writing?
Yeah, has everyone seen it? Oh, there it is. It's up there. Yep. Okay. So basically, what I've done is I like the vision, but I was concerned about the cost, the initial capital cost, because I am concerned about our financials in these talks. So I preferred to put up a lower figure. So in consultation with Mayor Andrew, I wanted to get a feel for what 12 million would get us. And my understanding is that it would give us the opportunity to purchase 3 of the properties. So I've put up that figure, and worked with staff have helped me to change some of the other figures accordingly to lower them, the operating expenditure, the consequential operating expenditure. So that reflects, for me, a more conservative sort of take at it, really.
And just, Councillor Jeff, the item 6, Roman numeral 6, the overall budget for community infrastructure reduced by 12 million.
Yes.
And this is a sinking lid approach in terms of the funding. Is that what
That's
you're achieving
right.
there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that, which was part of my initial goal, really, was to cut a bit of money out of the budget.
Okay, so we'll go
Do it when we're ready.
Okay, far away.
Okay.
Please, when I saw the first report, the valuation of all of the buildings on the total site was about 15 million, as I remember. Now it's being suggested that 12 million will only buy 3 of those buildings. Are we now looking at a likely market value of all of the buildings on the site to be that 20 million? Or are we looking at more than that?
Demolish them as well. Put it into green space.
Yep, so our initial estimates, based on the valuation information that was given at the last meeting, was about $15 million. So there's a degree of buffer in there to reflect demolition and so forth.
Oh, okay, so the 12 and Jeff's one includes the 3 buildings and the demolition of them. Okay, understand. Thank you.
Can I just foreshadow an additional amendment? Please.
Yeah, sure.
Just, sorry, I didn't realise I had to do it now. It's just all. So thank you for that. A motion from doing, which is the one around activating the. Well, I've got the words here somewhere. Activating the back of the museum. Thanks. There it is. Might not get any support for it, but I'm really keen to just talk to that and have that as an additional motion. You'll tell me when it can happen, Leanne.
Is this in? Is this instead of or replace Jeff and/or Andrews, or is this because I don't think either of the initial things address the back of the museum? So this is like you've got you're calling it an amendment, but in actual fact that is a standalone motion for something which we haven't considered. Am I right?
Is it? Right, well, wherever it should come, I had signalled that I would like that to be considered, and I see that as not contingent on this other.
No.
I'm sorry.
It was in the unfunded list, so I thought it was coming later, but.
So, Governance Manager, is this the best place for a second motion to come forward on this item?
I'm happy to be advised, but I think it's important that the Chair perhaps advises the elected member very clearly where this can be raised, if not here. If this is the only time we're dealing with the river plan, then it needs to be raised as a further motion here. If there is another part of the agenda where we are going to separately consider unfunded proposals and allow a vote on that, that would be appropriate too.
So Governance Manager, you can have multiple motions relating to each item. So we'd treat the first one as a motion, and this will be a second motion on the same item.
So basically what in this instance is we hear the motion, Mayor Andrews' motion and the amendment together, vote on the amendment and the motion.
And then we'll come back.
And then we'll come back and do the second motion.
Okay, so you're safe, Councillor Paula, we'll come back after this discussion.
Look, I'm relaxed as to whether it comes now or later, as long as I get to test it.
Yep.
Thank you.
So hang on, how is this?
Sorry?
This has got nothing.
It was put on the board as part of the unfunded, and it's on that list there. And there's the unfunded river plan task force priority projects on page 352.
Yep, thank you. We'll do it later.
Happy with that?
Yep,
Let's not complicate things.
We decomplicate it, it's going to come later.
Yeah.
Yep. Great words all the time, Councillor McPherson.
Where's the Deputy Mayor?
I think he's gone to the bathroom.
Okay. Yep.
Vision for a central city park. Pretty much as soon as I saw it, I thought, yep, that's got real potential. I see it as an incredible opportunity, really, to in essence, move the River Plan ahead. We've done some good work this year through the River Plan Task Force, and that's still valuable and that's still ongoing. For me, though, this vision being put up here has the potential to make a fundamental statement about the river's relationship with the city. I'm mindful of the financial pressures, and that's why I've put up an alternative figure. I think it's more realistic for where we are this year. I think we're all aware that there has been a bit of a change in the way we've approached the River Plan in the last year. The work on Victoria on the River has enabled us to centralise our work on the plan, focusing on that area from Victoria on the River down towards the museum and the proposed regional theatre. I think it's made the plan even more exciting. And this is a guy who's got the Ferrybank picture still on his Facebook page, but I think I've just felt that I've seen something actually that's going to work better. And I think it's more palatable to some of the CBD businesses I've dealt with who were concerned about the Ferrybank's distance from the rest of the CBD and what impact that development may have on them. So we're concentrating on this part of the CBD at the moment, and I think it makes good sense to look at the vision which would actually give us some real control in terms of how that area is going to look, how we're going to showcase the river. We in essence have a chance to be in control over our own destiny by owning these properties. For the first time, you know, in more than 100 years, the city will actually turn around to face the river. We'll actually be able to see the river from Victoria Street. So, absolutely there are heritage buildings there, and absolutely there's a lot of water to go under the bridge. There's a lot of discussion and design ahead, but what this idea does do is it gives us control of the area and it gives us an opportunity to design incorporating protection of some of the built heritage, but incorporating great park and promenade features all into one. I think it's a great opportunity, and I would really hope that supporters of the River Plan would also see that there's merit to this proposal and give it a go. I mean, aren't we trying to get the best result for the city here? Aren't we trying to make the River Plan the best it can possibly be? I think we need to remember that the River Plan doesn't belong to anyone. We're all allowed to be involved and to have ideas. I urge you not to dismiss this plan on the basis that you may not have been involved in the idea's original conception, or that it's a departure from the path that we were travelling on, or that it's relatively new. That doesn't mean it's not a great idea. The River Plan belongs to us all, and I think let's get together and make it the best it can possibly be. For me, this is a transformational idea. As I said, you know, I love the Ferrybank concept. I still have it on my Facebook page, but I'm willing to acknowledge when I see something I think that's got even more potential because it's so central to the CBD. So my amendment, smaller investment, which will get the plan off to a great start by allowing the council to purchase these 3 properties. And I urge councillors to support this vision. I think we'll never look back. Thank you.
Okay, can I ask if the Deputy Mayor, if I withdraw my motion and support Jeff's amendment, which Jeff's amendment will then become the motion. I'll need a show of hands on that, so...
We're substituting
okay.
the amendment, so as long as Martin agrees.
Are you okay with that, Deputy Mayor? Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you. Okay, Mark.
Right. Look, I'm a sucker for visions. Thanks for your interruption. No, I'm a sucker for a good vision. I I love the idea. I think the timing is completely 100% wrong. We're busy, we're just about to slam people with a 15.5% rates rise. We're about to slam them with a 10% fuel tax, which is going down like a cup of warm whatever. And so I think, look, it's a great vision. I think the timing is wrong, but I take on Councillor Southgate's point that, you know, we need as much public consultation on these things as possible. Now, I'm aware that if we are to vote for this, we are just voting to put it out for public consultation. So I'd like to see some public consultation on this. So I will support it going out to public consultation. If the public like it, then I like it. If they don't like it, then I don't like it in this case. I'm pretty sure I know which way it's going to go, so I will support it, definitely, going through to public consultation, absolutely, for the process.
Not a hand puppet, are you?
Paula.
I also love vision, and actually, to be honest, those architects did a great job within the brief they were given and came up with a really visionary design, a lovely thing that most people out in the general public haven't seen yet. And I guess that's the core of my issue and why I'll be voting against it. We can't actually consider this as just one discrete project in this financial time that we've got ahead of us, because we've got a suite of community projects and considerations on the whiteboard there yet to vote on, and they'll all add up. Absolutely agree with Councillor Bunting that this is just the wrong time to start adding in unexpected projects from the public's point of view. I am concerned because, as I said, the river plan, and you know, it's no secret that I didn't like every last aspect of that design either. The river plan was developed in consultation with the public and community stakeholders over a long period of time. And it was adopted by the previous council. I have a strong view that it's not the job of individuals, of new councils, to come in and reinvent the world without taking the community on the journey with them. That's just not fair. That means we could essentially chuck out every single strategy and plan in this place just because somebody else has a good idea. Now, I applaud Mayor King for his vision. I've walked along Victoria Street and the river many times in the times that I've lived in Hamilton too, postulating about what beautiful things could happen along there. And I guess lots of Hamiltonians are in the same position, but I don't expect to drop my vision in the middle of a new plan and change the future. I'd expect to discuss with other people. I'm really surprised that Councillor Gallagher is completely happy with this, because he chaired the River Plan Task Force group and did a very good job, and not once in the early days did we start talking about alternatives. So we've kind of, and as I say, I'm a bit of a fan, and I'll come up later and I'm sure I won't get support for it, but I'm a bit of a fan of win-win and getting some improvements to the museum at the same time, some improvements in connection to the river. And that includes the new jetty that we're currently repairing, and potentially in the slightly longer medium term to have a pedestrian bridge over to Piranha Park or Memorial Park. Look, I just think it's wrong, in all shades of wrong, to a new project with this amount of dollars. And I know Jeff's done a very good job at trying to reduce the dollars. But however, I suspect the numbers are here to carry this through, and like everyone else, I will be interested to hear what the public have to say about it, especially the many that were involved in the development of the river plan, including those architects as well. Very clever people, lots of vision and design, no criticism of them whatsoever. In fact, I applaud them. But the process around this is all wrong, and the costs are too high in this current financial situation.
Councillor Ange.
Look, thank you. It's not going to come as a surprise that I'm not going to support the motion. And just in responding to Councillor Taylor around ideas and being open to that, and I agree with him, certainly any idea that is a good idea, it shouldn't matter whose it is. Unfortunately, I believe that that's not how this new council has approached a lot of our strategies and plans that Councillor Southgate rightly pointed out. We took the public along with us. I think certainly at the beginning of this term there was a lot of criticism about, well, now it's a new day and it's a new council, so I feel that a lot of good ideas were chucked out just because they were somebody else's. Look, the Central City Park, we were told back in March that there was a big dark financial cloud heading our way, and now we're facing, with a new motion, this is still a $30 million hit on the books. We have a river plan. This is not going to come as a surprise to anyone that, yes, I was involved on the river plan, but it's a good idea. It's a good idea because it truly connects with the river in every way possible, not just from a high embankment that looks down on the river. It's a nice park to have, and in every way, in living near the river, in playing on the river, playing in the river, sports on the river, the tourism that it was going to bring, the river centre that it was going to bring. The river plan is everything that this plan isn't. We did take the public along with us. This, to me, is a hard engineering response to something that had spanned 2 councils, took the public along with it, and activated. And that's actually what a lot of the projects that are up for today are. We're actually trying to resolve with hard engineering responses when actually it's all about activation. And that's what the river plan was built on, activation, people living near, people swimming in, tourism on, tourism visiting, a lot more than a high, hard engineering response simply looking down on. Appreciate any elected member's opportunity at any time to bring forward an idea, but actually I do support an idea when it's a good one, but I don't think this is a good one. I think because of the environment that we have been put into, or being told that we're in with a big black financial cloud that's looming over us, I think that this is an irresponsible way to spend $30 million, so I cannot support it.
Thank you. Can I just ask the Chief Executive what this motion is, the cost of this motion?
So the capital cost of this motion is $12 million. There is operating expenditure of $300,000 in year 1, and then ongoing operating expenditure of $300,000 going forward, and then there's demolition costs of $1.8 million and $4.2 million. So that's probably $20 million in terms of costs.
It says $12 million in the first Roman numeral run. Let's ignore the second one. It's only $300,000. Then another 1.8 operating expenditure in year 2. Then in year 3 another 4.2. Then write-off of 4.5 in year 2, a write-off of 8.4 in year 3. When I add all of those up, plus the bottom one, the overall budget.
Yep, the write-off is an accounting adjustment. It's a double counting.
Yes, but it's still a cost on the books.
Technically not.
Oh, come on. Yeah, I know you can make numbers do it. All right, that's how you want to spin it?
No, I'm just not spinning it. It's effectively the same number as the top of the $12 million.
We're purchasing, with respect, we're purchasing assets, they go onto our books, then we're writing those assets off. That has a material impact.
Is it $30 million, or how much is it?
No, anyway, yep. I was talking about cash outlay, Councillor Ange talking about accounting, so that's fine.
Deputy Mayor.
The river plan and Central City transformation, and I don't think you can divorce the two, is a 30-year, 20-year project. It's been a long-term project, and actually Margaret Evans, Julie Hardacre, Andrew King, what do they have in common? They all 3 of them have a passion for developing the Riverbank precinct. Now, if there's an opportunity that comes up, which we authorise the Chief Executive to engage in discussions around some strategic land purchases, we need to be nimble. This is a 20-year journey. So obviously we're going to prioritise the central CBD part of the river plan, and we're not actually today voting on the exact micro detail. We're voting on, as this amendment, or this new motion, on a relatively reduced funding package from the Mayor's original motion to allow the Central City Transformation and River Plan to proceed. Now, I'm crystal clear, this motion does not preclude the work that we are currently doing around the linkage from the Hamilton Gardens through to the Anzac Bridge, and Lance recalls very well the walkabout we did with previous Mayor Hardacre in terms of some of the vegetation, the issue of signage. This does not preclude how, if we did to remove the now defunct municipal pools, how that will have a massive impact in terms of the Band Rotunda and down to the ferry bank. That will be, ironically, a very significant opening up of that area. So this doesn't preclude those options. All it does, in my view, it takes and seizes some opportunities that we now have as a result of negotiations with some landowners and some philanthropic funding, as I understand it, in this area. Now, I've clearly said that obviously when we get into the micro detail, of course I want to revisit and analyse the Victoria streetscape, what that would look like. I want to see what the if you like, the visual frontage of the theatre, how that keeps the Hamilton Hotel historic integrity. Obviously, I want to look at what that streetscape looks like. Very clearly, had a clear indication in terms of the residential apartments. They are not on offer at this point, and unlikely to be so, as I understand it. Obviously, we're factoring that in. So what we had earlier on, we had, if you like, the long-term vision, but we've also had some interim visions along the way. All you are doing today is putting out this proposal for 10-year plan consideration in the context of the river plan and the central city transformation plan, and you are being nimble. In 3 years' time, when we have the next LTP, you will recalibrate again. You know, this is not locking something for 10 years. This is an opportunity where we have some opportunities at the moment to purchase some land, and as a result, we're purely readapting the river plan. So I'll be supporting this amendment, and I also note, in fact, this is actually a reduced amount from the Mayor's original proposal. Of course I'm a strong believer in the river plan. Of course I'm a strong believer in heritage. Of course I'm a strong believer in the Waikato Regional Theatre. A strong believer in evolving the ferry bank, the Wellington Street, the links to the gardens. This cannot happen in years, and we all know basically this is a 20-year project. This is the next 3 or 4 years of it, if in the end we get public acceptance.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, that was I love Martin's speeches today. They are just amazing and very rousing, so it's really cool. I don't think I can even closely imitate that. But whatever. Look, I didn't like the vision at the start. I just thought, oh gosh, a waste of money. Another mayor comes along with a great vision. We're spending all this amounts of money like we've had them in the past. The only thing is the past ones, they were for all Hamiltonians. They were white elephants that were for a few people, and really we're still paying for them, and we'll still pay for them for many years to come. And one of them we can't even, it's not there anymore. Whatever, I don't want to go into the past, but this is a vision. It all changed for me when the theatre came online, and it was suggested in that area by the river. It changed my whole view of what this area could be, and then going up and from Victoria on the river, seeing the vision of the river and seeing what can happen. I still want to have it connected with the bottom of the river, so with the pontoon, with easy access to the bottom of the river. But I also just thought about some of the things is if we're down by the river, we might have that 100-year flood in 2 weeks in a row, and what are we going to do then? So, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to, but it is that we don't know with what's happening with the environment and with the different weather patterns and everything. The closer we are to the river, really safe at the top. I love the ideas of the vision, how to look down onto the river, and people want to be connected. I come from a river city, and people just want to be connected, even just visually connected. I love the way we can have cafes there, and we will not, the restaurants that are at the top and the cafes that are at the top there at the moment, they don't have to go away. They can replant themselves at the bottom there in that new area. So we're not going to lose any, they're not going to lose out. And I just think it is, I know it's an incredibly bold, and I just want to see it going forward, to hear what the people are going to say about this. I know they've been, they've seen the other river plan, and that was great. But I just like Councillor Jeff, I changed my mind now about this. I think this is something our grandchildren will be excited to play on. I think I'll just have to get some. Yeah, that's me.
Can I make a very quick comment here, Your Worship? I know it's breaking with protocol, but I just want to say, whether you agree with them or not, I think your speeches are good today, really, really good. So keep going.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like this, right? This is nothing against Mayor Andrew, because this is a visionary plan. But the thing is, I was voted in by the ratepayer to look after their responsibilities and to represent them. We're facing a 15.5% rates hike here, all right? And we've got these little plans coming in that are just increasing things all the time. Now, I think if you vote for this, you've been wandering around with blinkers on and earplugs in, because it actually makes me quite angry that we're actually voting for something like this at the moment, facing a 15.5% rates increase. So for that reason, I'm voting against it.
Councillor Robb.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I support the vision. I've always been an advocate for the river plan, and I like this location even more so that it will be potentially located close to the new theatre. I also have support for Councillor Taylor's attempt today to view this with initial cost restraint. I have a real concern over the uncertainty that surrounds what this total project is going to cost. I've observed the cost overruns to date on the Victoria on the river, particularly with the bank instability, and I suspect that as you continue along that same area, we will encounter, as we develop this park, exactly the same, and the cost. No one has asked today what the total indicative cost of the project is, and I think I would like to see some outcome. So if this has got legs today, I think we urgently need, between now and eventual sign-off, does get public support, we need to know what it's going to cost. And it is possible, because the river plan at Grantham Street did have a total indicative cost, and that was horrifically high. And I know that was of concern to you, Mayor Andrew, and I know there were many occasions where you quoted the unrealistically high cost of developing the Grantham Street precinct for the river plan. And bear in mind that that's largely a green site, so we could see what was going to happen there, and we didn't have any buildings to pull down and no banks or no ground underneath to, and see what might be a minefield there in terms of the cost to redevelop that into a green space. I anticipate, in following Councillor James' comment, that the public will not support this if they are facing a 15% plus rate increase. So I think we've got the vision right. I don't think the time is right, and I think we will be told that in no uncertain terms. But I think today, if it has got legs to go to that next step, then I think we urgently need to get some probity around what we think the total cost is. And Councillor Deputy Mayor Martin is right. It might take 30 years to get there, but we need to go in with at least an indicator as to what the total cost of the project might be. Thank you.
Councillor Leo.
Idea, sure, and I'd love to be looking at the river from Victoria Street. We've talked today about the cafes which are going to be there and all that sort of stuff. And my concern is, of course, is people will go to the cafe, they'll put their FPOS card into the machine and it'll be declined because they've had to pay a 15% rate increase. I really think that the problem is the timing is not right. Will it ever be right? Probably not, because otherwise somebody would have done this many, many years ago. The way I see it, it's just part of a shopping list. And sometimes, of course, when you go with the shopping list and you have money in your bank account, there's some things you just can't purchase. So I will be voting against it.
Councillor Dave.
Yep, I'm with Siggy and Rob and their view about this. I think my view has changed a little bit. I'm no great fan of the river plan. I see this as something a bit different and a lot better and a lot less grandiose. It doesn't include a bridge over the river and for pedestrians and things like that. I, like Rob, suspect that when people are confronted with the overall reality, something's going to have to go in their mind. I imagine this would be one of the things that might, but people have, James and Leo, you have to remember that large numbers of people every election say we should turn the city around to face the river. So here's the opportunity, and not a bad looking opportunity. So, you know, it's not going to be free to do that. So how much to pay? And I think that debate's a good debate to have. I don't think we're putting this out expecting necessarily that it'll go through, but if you don't put it out there in front of people, there's no chance for them to say, yes, I do favour this above other things. Yep.
Councillor Mallett.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to support this, and this will probably surprise people. I think it's well, I think it's a dramatically more honourable process than we went through the last river plan, where we put out a whole lot of dreams and nothing was costed, nothing was funded, and it was actually appalling the way that was done. We created a huge amount of expectation and didn't provide for it. At least we've got the honour in this one that we've got some money around it. It is going, I mean, and we've got the backstop, and this is a, you know, they say patriotism is a refuge of every scoundrel. So is public consultation, because we can all wait and find out how badly they think about this. So there is a check and balance on this thing, in that the people are going to tell us. And Leo's right. If the check bounces, we'll hear about it pretty quickly. There needs, and Rob is dead right. There's an awful lot of stuff that this is not an accurate cost. You know, there's a hell of a lot more work needs to be done to get some accurate costing on this stuff. There needs to be time, there needs to be some more time spent on the thing. This actually does turn the city round to face the river. The previous river plan I didn't think actually anything anywhere near like this one does. So it does actually address that, as Andrew said, you know, we all of us can remember, you know, for a long, long time, people have been grizzling about silly people who built Hamilton, they turned their back on the river. This actually addresses that. I'm very sure that I will be readdressing this and may have a different view by the time the public have spoken. But at the moment, I think this thing has the legs and it deserves to go forward to at least the public consultation process.
Right, we'll go to the board to vote on this.
The motion is carried, 7 for, 5 against.
Okay, we'll now go back to. I'll just go back to Richard's reimagining the city centre. We'll get that up on the board.
Reimagining the state government.
Yeah.
Which happens to be the centre of the city, you're right.
The food's here. Let's get this through. This will be quick. Okay, so we'll just get this one through and then the food's here. So the food is here, but let's get this one through. All right. All right, so it's... Hang on, it'll take a few minutes. So it's moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor. There is no debate. Okay, so Ange, you're on. It's a good time to go now, Mark.
Well, it's recorded.
It's the motion that's in your book. What page is the motion on?
Oh, I've lost the pot.
Yep.
86.
No. Again, I'm going to be predictable today. This feels to me like this is a project about outsourcing and privatising services and activities that actually people expect local government to deliver, and I know Councillor Mallet will strongly disagree with me on that. I don't like these kinds of special projects with different names. I've seen a few of them and I'm very wary of them. I would prefer an organisation that responded on a daily basis to always looking for better ways to do things, more efficient ways to do things and smarter ways to do things. I would prefer an organisation where all staff were empowered from the bottom levels right through to the senior levels to be able to go and ring a bell and say, hey, wait a minute, I've got an idea, and be able to be empowered enough to do that quickly and efficiently so that everybody feels part of the organisation, not a big ticket project run from the top. In my view, that would be a smart organisation and one that I would want to be involved in. Regionally, we have local authority shared services that does this. We had a discussion not so long ago actually where we talked about and encouraged and actually identified the opportunities that particular stream of work could be encouraged to do more of. We have 7 general managers that are very smart, and I think 7, and very capable of their jobs, and around 1,200 staff. There is no doubt in my mind that if we wanted to look for efficiencies and savings and actually smarter ways to do things and better ways to do things, because sometimes things are worth paying for, that those people, those 1,200 staff, those 7 general managers, along with the CEO, could do that. I cannot support, again, we're asking our ratepayers to cough up 15.5%. I cannot ask for this big ticket item that feels to me like the end result will be outsourcing critical services, will be privatising of critical services and facilities that actually the people expect local government, their local government, to deliver.
Councillor Mark.
I think we've got an exceptional CEO. Yeah, it is. No, well, I mean, you know, yeah. And for that reason, I won't be supporting this. I would have supported if it was 1 year and we could quantify it a bit better. But I think $1 million per year is a little bit too much to ask for me at this stage. Yeah, no, I'll encourage you in any other way I can and keep being creative and keep bringing the savings in.
Councillor Gary.
I have some sympathy for what Angela was saying before and what Mark said. I don't think this is the most efficient way of improving our business. I think the most efficient way for improving the way we run our operation here is for members of this council to accept that we can't do everything. There are things that we do that are obsolete. There are things that we do that could be better done by the private sector. And saying that there are things that we simply shouldn't be doing, that we are encroaching, and it gets down to real fundamental stuff. We're encroaching onto other people's freedom when we start money out of them and start spending it the way we want to, rather than leaving the money with the individual and the family and the businesses that earn it, and let them spend their money. However, we are in a situation where we need to find costs. We need to reduce our spending. I'm appalled at the way we have gone about this whole process, and I've said this a number of times, that we have seemed to have addressed our financial issues, our financial deficit, I guess, by only trying to look at additional revenue streams rather than reducing costs. This is a genuine effort to try and reduce costs. I don't think it's the best way to reduce costs, which is totally opposed to what Angela said. I think there are stuff we need to stop doing. We need to get out of. And I think what this is going to do is we're going to, well, because of the lead that we've got from the elected members, we're going to keep on doing everything we've always done. We're just going to do it a different way. And I don't think that is the most beneficial way of addressing our financial deficit, but it is at least an effort to do that.
Councillor Jeff.
Andrew, we've been talking a lot lately about a fundamental problem that we've got in local government with how we're funded. All councils have got it, but certainly growth councils have got it especially badly. And you know, you can only go on so long pumping the ratepayers for money, and we know that. We talked about the regional petrol tax just the other day. We're aware of this problem that we've got. And although this local government sector is pushing government for answers, for a change, we do things or they do things, you know, we don't want to hold our breath. So it falls to us to do some of the thinking for them. To think outside the square, fundamentally out of the square, and look at doing things differently. And I think, well, I'm sure this is what Richard is proposing. And I don't think this sort of review can be done in-house, really. It needs to be somewhat revolutionary thinking. It does make sense to me that you would need an external operator to deal with external with this. It's a big deal, and local government needs it though. And you know, Gary's right. We do need to trim what we start spending money on. We have to make those hard calls ourselves. But I think I hear what Angela's saying, but ratepayers probably have to realise as well that the council can't actually carry on doing things the way it always has. The demands are different. It's a different world. And we do need to look at things completely differently. And I think Richard's the right guy to lead this. I'm going to support it.
Councillor Siggy.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you so much to Councillor Ange, because I've just changed my mind about this, and and thank you to Mallet as well, because he said Richard is the best CEO ever. So that's something like that. You said somebody. Oh, did he? Oh, I'm so sorry. Somebody said it. But one of the things I think I sort of mentioned it ages ago, talking to you, Richard, that is what the Japanese car companies have done for many years, and it's Kaizen. And I would love to see that happening here. That finally we've got a whiteboard here, and you know, in every level there should be whiteboards where people could just write little ideas down, and at the end of the week they get collected. They say, and I don't know, I've just read it about these companies, that most of the ideas get kicked out, but there's always a few really, really good ideas. And I think we can do this internally. Oh, we've got so many clever managers here and everything, and we've got awesome staff here, and we hear that all the time, how awesome they are. So I just expect them to keep on awesome and coming up with ideas that can save us more money. Thank you. Kaizen.
So, was that speaking for or against?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Dove.
Thanks. Look, I actually have a lot of agreement, surprisingly, with Gary on this. though I don't take the philosophical approach. I don't think it's got the slightest thing to do with encroaching on people's freedoms. I think that's a philosophical approach. I'd rather a pragmatic approach, and I know that within our council services and operations that there are things that are better done by other organisation outside, not necessarily the private sector. I actually think the community sector can do quite a lot of things better than we do, more cost effectively, as well as better quality, for instance. So I take, as I said, the pragmatic approach. I also think we've got an excellent CEO, even though I didn't vote for his salary increase. So just bring that back down a bit. Yeah, that's right. And if I...
no resources. Off.
If I thought that he'd be party to, and I'm really realistic about this, if I thought he'd be party to shafting workers, either as a group or in individual sections, I would run a mile from this, but I don't think he or our organisation's values now would allow that to happen. So I'm confident that it's worth having a look at, worth consulting on, because don't forget we have another final say on this in a few months' time. So I think to throw away the chance now of consulting on that would be actually quite foolish, given the potential savings there. I'd like to see more information we've had so far, but I think we have to be pragmatic about this. If there's a chance of making the savings, why would we not say, let's have a decent look at this and at least give ourselves some more time to think about it?
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Yeah, I think Councillor Davis probably summed up. I think we need to give our Chief Executive the mandate to do this. We are, in the end, going to finalise a proposal for a rate increase, and we've obviously got other challenges in terms of suggestions about funding. But also, what we're also going to say to the Chief Executive at the same time is for future years come back to us, where can we get better efficiencies? We have to be very careful about using words like privatisation. I don't see working better with, say, community organisations, privatisation. I don't see working closely with the Momentum organisation to deliver a Waikato regional theatre as privatisation. I don't see working better with our regional partners in terms of the work we're doing now with Waipa in terms of the water proposal as privatisation. I think we're looking at ways in which we can more effectively adapt public services to sustain a city that is undergoing massive growth pressures and obviously massive budgetary pressures as well. So, and trust me, if this was a sort of a knockdown Rogernomics version, Hamilton version of Rogernomics, then I would not be giving Mr Briggs any mandate whatsoever, and all the mayor. So I think that we should be doing this. Of course, ultimately, whatever proposals come back, we as a governance body with our CE will tick off. So I'll be supporting this.
Okay, we'll go to the vote on the board.
The motion is equal.
Where is it? So naturally I'll use casting vote. It's my concept. Doesn't look too good. Could you read out the result?
So it's using casting vote.
You need to...
The motion is carried using Meeking's casting vote.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll break now for dinner. Food's here, and we'll be back at 7 o'clock. Sorry?